A fragment of audio surfaces online, a trembling voice repeating, "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." The Air Force denies its authenticity. The clip is barely 12 seconds long, grainy, and oddly intimate, like someone whispering into a microphone from a place not meant for human sound. Listeners describe it as claustrophobic, as if the voice was speaking through metal or from within a storm. Within hours, the recording spreads across forums dedicated to aviation mysteries and military conspiracies. The hashtags multiply faster than facts. By morning, millions have heard it. No one agrees what it means. The first to investigate seriously is Lena Hart, a freelance journalist with a history of chasing strange air incident stories the mainstream press avoids. She's used the hoaxes, doctored radar footage, pilot chatter spliced from old transmissions, the usual theater of attention seekers. But this one feels different. The distortion in the recording doesn't match any known encryption or interference pattern. There's something organic about it, like the sound itself is breathing. She isolates the background noise and finds, layer beneath the hum, a faint pulse of infrasound. Frequencies too low for human hearing, but powerful enough to stir unease in the body. That detail hooks her. In her small apartment outside Seattle, the walls lined with stacks of Freedom of Information Act requests, she listens to the loop over and over until she begins to hear shapes. Wind, yes, but also rhythm, as though the storm had intention. The metadata suggests the file was uploaded from a public Wi-Fi hub near Eielson Air Force Base, Alaska, a place already famous for sightings. Lights that hovered over frozen tundra, aircraft that vanished from radar and reappeared 20 minutes later. Lena books a flight north the same night. When she arrives, the locals know about the recording. The bartender at the Aurora Diner plays it from his phone for a pair of truckers, mouthing the words like a ghost story he's told 100 times. "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." The phrase unsettles everyone differently. Some think it means aircraft hidden in atmospheric layers. Others, something worse. Creatures moving through dimensions stacked like weather systems. Lena drives toward the base perimeter. Snow drifts against the chain link, and the air smells metallic, charged. Every few minutes, she hears a low roll of thunder, without lightning. The sky seems swollen, as if holding something inside. At a gas station 20 miles away, she meets Tom Reyes, a retired radar technician who used to work at Eielson. His hands shake when she plays the clip. "I've heard that before," he mutters. Or something close. Back in 2003, training exercise went dark. We lost contact with 6 pilots. They came back different. Flight records wiped, but their own voices, they didn't sound right, like the air had passed through them. He refuses to elaborate, only warning her to stay grounded, literally. That night, Lena checks into a motel whose only guestbook entries are military contractors. She dreams of flying, slowly, without sound, through dense silver mist. When she wakes, her laptop is open, the audio file still looping, except now the voice seems to respond to her breathing, syncing with it. Each repetition warps slightly. "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." Then, "Beneath you." She slams the lid shut. The hum lingers in her ears for hours. The next day, she drives to the coordinates embedded in the file's waveform, numbers faintly visible when converted to spectrogram view. They point to a restricted air corridor between mountain ridges, long decommissioned, where radar returns often disappear. As she approaches, her car's GPS flickers, showing 2 altitudes at once. Snow falls upward for half a second before correcting itself. There, half buried in ice, lies the carcass of an aircraft, or what's left of one. Not military issue, at least not officially. Its metal skin is smooth, seamless, like something printed rather than assembled. Through a crack in the fuselage, faint light pulses from within, rhythmic, steady, matching the same infrasound she found in the recording. She steps closer, phone camera rolling. The light reacts, dimming when she exhales, brightening with her heartbeat. Inside, she sees shapes suspended midair. Fragmented uniform, a headset, droplets of something that should fall but don't. It's as if time in there moves sideways. Then the sound begins again, not from her phone this time, but from everywhere. The mountains echo the same phrase, deeper now, almost compassionate. They're above the clouds, but beneath you. Her vision blurs. The snow becomes static. She stumbles back, and the light flickers out. When she opens her eyes, the wreckage is gone, only smooth snow untouched. Her phone screen shows 12 seconds of new audio added to the original file. She listens, the same trembling voice, but this time it's hers. By dawn, she's back in town, shaken but resolute. She uploads a second clip anonymously. Within hours, the Air Force issues another denial. Fabricated content. No relation to official communications. Yet meteorological data from that night shows an anomaly over the Alaskan corridor. Cloud formations shaped like concentric rings, rotating opposite to wind direction, recorded for exactly 12 seconds before vanishing. Experts flood social media with explanations. Hoax, pareidolia, viral marketing. But pilots start reporting strange reflections above storm systems, something that looks like sky bending toward itself. Civilians describe hearing whispers when airplanes pass overhead. Always the same message, rearranged slightly, like it's learning language through repetition. Lena's gone by then. Her apartment stands empty, except for pinned maps and scribbled notes. If they're beneath us, what's above them? Neighbors say she left for Denver to follow another lead. Others claim they've seen her on classified flight manifests heading north again. Weeks later, a new file surfaces, higher quality, untouched by distortion. It begins with breathing, calm and even. Then a voice, not trembling now, but clear, steady, almost serene, says, "We looked up for answers, but they were waiting below. The sky was just their reflection." The Air Force denies its authenticity again, and the world listens, waiting for the next 12 seconds. Official debriefing. Classified Level 7. Subject, Captain Raymond Holt. Operation codename, Nightlight Recon. Location, over the Yukon corridor. Coordinates redacted. Date, March 14, 1972. Mission objective, track and identify unidentified radar bloom moving contrary to wind and elevation patterns. The transcript begins like any other. The hum of the tape machine, the faint shuffle of paper, and a man's voice, calm, precise, used command. Captain Raymond Holt had flown for 17 years. Vietnam veteran. Decorated. No disciplinary record. Every flight logged. Every maneuver by the book. When they summoned him to the debriefing room at Elmendorf Air Base, he thought it was a post-mission formality, but the men waiting for him weren't his usual superiors. 2 wore insignia he didn't recognize, and 1 carried no badge at all, just a black folder stamped, "Do not reproduce." The tape starts after Holt takes a seat. Interviewer. Captain, for the record, confirm the time you first visualized the target. Holt. 0120 hours. Sector 9. Thought it was a storm cell at first, but the radar bloom didn't behave like weather. It moved against both wind and elevation. Interviewer. Against? Holt. Yes, sir. It climbed while the wind vectors pushed down, like it ignored air pressure. Pause. Paper rustles. Interviewer. And visually? Holt. Dark sky. No moon. But I could see something, maybe reflection, maybe emission. It shimmered, like heat mirage at high altitude. My wingman didn't see it until it pulsed. Interviewer. Pulsed? Holt. A soft flash. White, then amber. Silent. The tape skips slightly, a deliberate edit, the kind analysts mark with red ink. When it resumes, Holt's breathing has changed. Faster. He's remembering something visceral. Holt. We climbed to match his altitude. 22,000 feet. The bloom split in 2, moving opposite directions but maintaining symmetry. I've never seen flight like that. Not from any craft. Not even experimental. Interviewer. You believe it was a craft? Holt. I believe it was aware of us. That sentence lingers on a recording like a cold draft. Radar logs confirm what Holt reported. An object or 2, moving at impossible vectors, briefly vanishing, then reappearing exactly 1 nautical mile east. The system marked it as Ghost Echo, but technicians later found the reflection was generating its own electromagnetic field, an impossibility for atmospheric anomalies. Later in the transcript, Holt describes a moment the instruments failed. Holt, at 0140, both altimeters froze. The compass began to spin. My co-pilot tried to reboot the navigation system, but all screens displayed static. That's when I noticed the horizon wasn't straight anymore. The debriefers pressed him to explain. Holt, it was bending. The stars didn't move. They curved, like we were inside a lens. And I swear for a second I could see into clouds, like another layer of sky beneath the one we were flying in. At this point, the recording's background picks up a sound, low, rhythmic, almost like breathing through machinery. The analysts note mechanical hum, source unknown. Holt, command ordered descent, but the controls lagged, as if we were flying through syrup. Then the radio picked up a voice, faint, repeated, not English. Interviewer, could it have been interference? Holt, it wasn't interference. It was inside the cabin. My co-pilot heard it too. Interviewer, you claim the sound originated inside the cockpit? Holt, not sound. Vibration, like the air was speaking through us. He hesitates here. Tape clicks, then a soft exhale. Holt, the voice said, they're above the clouds, but beneath you. Over and over. The phrase chills the room. None of the debriefers comment. The note-taker writes in the margin, subject possibly exposed to infrasound hallucination. At 0155 hours, Holt's jet reappears on radar. No record of how it vanished. It descends safely and lands at 2:04. But the flight deck photographs reveal a fine layer of frost coating the exterior, a frost that forms inside the seams of the fuselage, as if the plane had been subjected to extreme cold without atmospheric cause. Holt and his co-pilot are examined immediately. Their pupils are dilated, but both test negative for narcotics or hypoxia. Yet their vital signs are synchronized: heart rate, breathing, temperature, matching down to the decimal for 6 hours after the flight. Doctors can't explain it. The official report concludes: pilot exposure to unidentified atmospheric phenomenon resulting in temporary instrumentation malfunction. No credible evidence of foreign technology or life forms. Recommend psychological monitoring for stress-induced sensory anomalies. Case closed, except it wasn't. 2 weeks later, Holt vanishes from his quarters at the base. No forced entry. Uniform folded neatly on the bed. His personal effects, including flight log and pocket recorder, gone. The next day, a new radar bloom appears over the same coordinates, identical pattern, same defiance of wind and elevation. Air Force Command locks the corridor and reclassifies the incident as meteorological test interference. But one technician, Sergeant Elena Brooks, quietly keeps a copy of Holt's final communication. It was never entered into the official archive. The message, transmitted 30 seconds before radar contact was lost, reads, Control, this is Nightlight 1. Object stationary. Altimeter 27.4, impossible reading. Request confirmation. Pause. Wait. Negative. It's not stationary. It's reflecting us. Then static. Then silence. Years later, Brooks leaks the debriefing tape to a fringe academic journal specializing in anomalous atmosphere behavior. The article is buried, dismissed as Cold War paranoia. But the audio fragment resurfaces decades later, the same trembling voice repeating, "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." Analysts match its acoustic signature to Holt's vocal profile. Perfect match. The Air Force issues a formal statement. No record exists of any Captain Raymond Holt serving active duty during that time period. Any materials suggesting otherwise are fabrications. And yet, Holt's name appears in payroll archives through 1973. His pension was paid to an unnamed beneficiary until 1976. Then terminated. The leaked flight data shows something stranger still. During Holt's final mission, barometric readings inverted for 12 minutes. Pressure dropped at ground level, while increasing at altitude, as though the sky itself had folded inward. In meteorological terms, impossible. In metaphysical terms, perhaps not. When the flight's black box is recovered decades later from a sealed evidence vault, it contains audio never before transcribed. Faint breathing, followed by Holt whispering, It's not a storm. It's a mirror, and we're the reflection. Then a sound like wind being inhaled. Then nothing. Modern analysts revisit the case under declassification. In 2001, the digital restoration of the tape reveals anomalies that no analog equipment of the era could have produced. There are subsonic frequencies mapped in geometric intervals, not random noise, but structured resonance, like a code embedded in the sound itself. Dr. Miriam Lane, a physicist studying acoustic topography, notices that when plotted, those frequencies form the outline of mountain ridges, corresponding exactly to Yukon Corridor. Within that outline is a hollow, an absence of frequency, a silent void. It's like a map of somewhere that isn't on Earth, she says during a symposium. Or perhaps it's inside Earth, projected upward through the atmosphere. Her findings are later seized under national security protocols. She disappears from academic records 6 months later. In 2024, the file leaks online, mislabeled as weather experiment data. It lasts 12 seconds, looping endlessly. The same voice, Holt's, murmuring through layers of interference. Analysts and amateurs alike try to clean it, enhance it, decode it. Every attempt only deepens the distortion, as if the recording resists translation. Then, one night, a radio enthusiast in Fairbanks claims to intercept a live broadcast on an unused Air Force frequency. It begins with static, then breathing, then a faint phrase. Nightlight complete. The reflection has learned to speak. Seconds later, weather satellites register a dense bloom above the Yukon, moving against wind and elevation patterns. Just like before, the Air Force denies its authenticity. Declassified field report, United States Air Force Weather Division. Date, November 3rd, 1981. Subject, persistent radar interference over Bighorn Mountains, Wyoming. Status, ongoing anomaly unresolved. Flight logs from regional monitoring stations began showing the same thing around late September, a circular blind spot, roughly 30 miles in diameter, centered over the Bighorn Range. Within this zone, radar returns vanished, aircraft transponders flickered, and radio signals collapsed completely, as though space itself had swallowed every frequency. At first, the anomaly was blamed on solar storms. But solar activity that week was minimal. Engineers recalibrated antennas, replaced transceivers, and even swapped out the entire communications rig at Ellsworth Air Control, yet the whole remained silent, perfectly round, immovable. To air traffic control, it appeared like a bruise on the radar screen, a void that refused reflection. The first pilot to cross it unintentionally was Lieutenant Joanne Mercer, ferrying a cargo jet east from Spokane. Her logs, later recovered, describe the event with military precision until they dissolve into fragments of disbelief. Entering coordinates 44 degrees north, 107 degrees west. Instruments stable. Static increasing on comms. Repeating transmission test, no response. Altimeter steady at 21,000 feet horizon appears distorted, flat, like reflection on still water. Adjusting course to bypass. Visual contact with terrain lost. Then silence. Her plane reappeared on radar 8 minutes later, not ahead of its course but behind it, as if time inside the zone had inverted. She landed safely but reported nausea, temporary disorientation, and something else she struggled to describe. The clouds looked wrong, like they were watching. After Mercer's incident, Project Deep Field was quietly established at an abandoned weather station near Shell Canyon. It was staffed not by meteorologists, but by mixed teams of radar physicists, psychologists, and personnel with no listed specialties. Local ranchers began noticing unusual activity. Convoys at night, power fluctuations, unmarked helicopters flying without lights. Some spoke of a faint, low hum that seemed to seep from the mountains themselves, most noticeable between midnight and 3. Hikers reported compass failures and dreams of echoes moving behind stone. A declassified memo, recovered decades later, describes a failed attempt to scan the blind spot from orbit. The KH-11 satellite array, designed for photographic reconnaissance, returned partial frames showing a shimmer across the terrain, like heat haze or distortion. But one frame contained something stranger, a reflection of the satellite itself, Seen from below, impossible given the laws of optics. The photograph was quietly reclassified as a lens artifact. By November, the Air Force authorized a manned survey. 3 aircraft were dispatched, 2 F-4 Phantoms and a reconnaissance C-135. The mission log reads like a descent into unreality. 041 hours. Phantoms report magnetic interference, minor turbulence. 043. Altitude sensors desync. Compasses spin. 044. Visual confirmation of auroral bands despite clear skies. 045. All comms lost. When contact returns at 053, the 3 planes are intact but displaced 25 miles south. Their black box data shows missing frames, 8 full minutes erased. Pilots describe hearing what they thought was ground control repeating, "Maintain course," though control insists no such transmission was sent. Audio analysis later reveals that the voice issuing the order was an exact frequency mirror of the pilot's own voice, reversed and slowed. The following week, the blind spot expanded by 2 miles. Civil aviation was rerouted indefinitely. Farmers below began finding thin metallic flakes in their soil, smooth as glass, humming faintly when exposed to wind. One piece placed near a radio emitted the same phrase on shortwave loop. "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." The Air Force issued an official statement citing localized magnetic inversion caused by geological iron deposits. Geologists, however, contested it. No deposit large enough could invert radio frequency polarity across such altitude. The blind spot circle of perfection was mathematically unnatural, as if drawn by a compass through air. Locals began calling it the hollow sky. One hunter, Caleb Drury, reported a personal encounter in December, according to his affidavit never made public. He followed an elk trail up the ridge at dusk. As he reached the clearing, all sound vanished, wind, birds, even his own footsteps. Above him, the clouds flattened into a silver sheet that rippled when he moved. He claimed he saw his reflection overhead, not on water but on the underside of the sky. Then his reflection blinked, and he didn't. When he stumbled back into normal air, his watch read 30 minutes earlier than when he'd entered the clearing. Project Deep Field recorded similar temporal discrepancies in controlled tests. Drones sent into the zone returned with altered timestamps, their clocks running backward by fractions a second. Radio frequencies reflected inverted phase waves, signals bouncing not off objects but off moments in time. Physicist Dr. Alan Weiss, leading the study, described the anomaly as a frequency cavity, where electromagnetic waves loop through themselves. In one memo, he proposed an unsettling analogy. Imagine the atmosphere as a recording tape. In this region, the tape is rewound and recorded over, again and again. The air remembers. Weeks later, Weiss disappears during a routine flight demonstration. His plane enters a blind spot and never reemerges. His transponder continues to ping faintly from within the void for 7 hours, broadcasting the same data packet on repeat. Altitude 0, pressure 0, message code 1972 Holt. That code matches the year and name from a nightlight recon incident. Coincidence, officially, but the recovered telemetry file, later leaked, shows something else, an audio fragment embedded in static, nearly identical to Captain Holt's voice. "If you hear me, we're below you now." By early 1982, the blind spot stabilizes at 40 miles wide. A no-fly order seals the airspace. The military builds an unmarked facility at the mountain's base, officially a weather observation post, though satellite imagery shows deep excavation pits, tunnels, and what appears to be an array of vertical antennas arranged in concentric rings. From ground level, locals describe it differently. At night, columns of pale light rise silently from a mountain's heart, pulsing in patterns too regular to be natural. Cattle refuse to graze near the perimeter. Residents of nearby Ten Sleep begin reporting vivid, identical dreams, standing on a cliff edge while a voice beneath clouds whispers coordinates in Morse rhythm. One local radio enthusiast records these dreams' coordinates as tones and plays them on shortwave. They translate to a perfect map of the blind zone's radius. Then, the radius expands again by 1 mile. Decades pass. The base is abandoned in 1997 after a subsurface collapse. Yet satellite scans from 2013 reveal faint circular discoloration in the terrain exactly where the antennas once stood. It changes yearly, rotating slowly, as though the mountain itself is turning beneath the soil. Modern radar still shows flickers, signals that appear only when storms pass directly overhead, like something using the lightning to peek through. Weather balloons launched through the corridor never return. Their last transmissions always end the same way. Frequency inversion, then a whisper of phrase distorted beyond human articulation, but statistically matching the phonetic pattern up beneath us. In 2022, a civilian drone hobbyist named Elijah Reeves uploads footage from the Bighorn Ridge to a YouTube channel with 72 subscribers. The clip shows what looks like an aurora localized to a single valley. As he pans upward, the camera autofocuses on an impossible reflection, clouds mirrored against other clouds, with moving silhouettes between them. Seconds before the feed cuts, an automated air traffic warning overlays the video. Restricted airspace, Bighorn anomaly. Turn back immediately. Reeves insists no such digital overlay was present when he filmed. His account is deleted 3 days later. The following month, commercial pilots report brief total instrument blackout, lasting 12 seconds while flying over Wyoming. The blind spot, dormant for decades, has returned. Flight control reviews the telemetry. Within that 12-second gap, every plane's altitude read 0, as if the sky and ground had momentarily exchanged places. Official statement from the U.S. Air Force. No abnormal radar or atmospheric phenomena detected. Temporary interference, likely due to regional magnetic activity. But leaked maintenance logs from the same week include a curious entry. Recalibration required on all West Coast early warning arrays. Cause, reflected ground signal from elevation 21,000 feet. Reflected ground signal, an oxymoron. Something above the Bighorn Mountains is returning the Earth's own radar image, perfectly mirrored. Locals still call it the hollow sky, though newer residents have another name for it. The mouth. On clear nights, when the wind stalls and stars appear too close, a faint vibration hums through the valley. Not from below, but from within the air itself, as if the sky were quietly exhaling. And every few years, when the hum grows louder, someone disappears. A hiker, a pilot, a weather balloon operator. Their last transmissions always mention the same thing. The clouds are moving wrong. My reflection is ahead of me. They're above the clouds, but beneath us. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Mission record, Nightlight Recon. Timestamp, 1:44 hours. Altitude, classified. Location, north of the Yukon corridor. Pilot, Captain Raymond Holt. Holt's jet enters the anomaly. At first, it feels like crossing turbulence, just a shiver through the wings, the kind you correct instinctively. But then the shiver doesn't end. It deepens. The air thickens around the fuselage, syrupy and slow. The stars blur above the canopy, warping into elongated streaks, like wet paint pulled by invisible fingers. Inside the cockpit, the instruments flicker. Altimeter lights pulse in chaotic rhythm. Radio needles swing to full deflection. Every display blinks the same 3 numbers, 000. Holt taps the gauge, then hits the backup system. It also reads 0. Altitude 0. Impossible. He radios ground control. Control, this is Nightlight 1. Altimeter reset. Do you copy? The reply crackles through static, stretched in like a voice underwater. Copy, Nightlight 1. Say again, altitude 0. Repeat, 0. All systems frozen. The sky looks inverted. The channel cuts out. From the ground, radar technicians watch as his aircraft blips, vanishes, and reappears in random intervals, each time mirrored. Coordinates inverted north-south, like the plane is blinking between 2 maps of reality. At 1:46, telemetry shows the impossible. Pressure inside the cabin increases while external atmospheric pressure drops. The air outside is thinning, yet Holt's instruments read compression. Inside the cockpit, he feels it too. His chest tightens. His helmet vibrates with a faint low hum. Static gathers along the glass canopy, curling into thin threads of light, not lightning, but reflection. It's as though his own navigation lights are bouncing back from inside the clouds. Then silence. The engines are running, yet he hears nothing. Not the roar, not the wind, only his heartbeat amplified inside his skull. It feels like the world has turned into a vacuum made of glass. He opens the mic again. Control, confirming. Visual horizon is inverted. The stars are below me, the cloud line above. Requesting instructions. No answer, but the radio isn't dead. It's alive, pulsing faintly with something beneath speech, an infrasonic rhythm, like a heartbeat too large to belong to anything human. Then a voice, not from control, not even from his headset. It rises from the structure of the aircraft itself, from a frame, the instruments, the very metal. Maintain course, it says softly. The voice is his own. In the debriefing tape, what little was recovered, Holt's breathing becomes erratic here. Analysts later note that the recording captures two distinct heart rates, both synchronized to the same voice frequency, one human, one ambient. He reports visual contact, a circular distortion forming ahead, transparent but refracting the starlight. He describes it as a hole made of reflection. When he banks to avoid it, the hole follows his movement precisely, like an afterimage that refuses to lag. He steadies the jet, against every instinct. He flies directly into it. The transition is instantaneous. One moment, he's surrounded by cloud. The next, pure clarity. No stars, no ground, just vastness, pale and luminous, like being inside the shell of a pearl. There's no gravity here, but not the weightlessness of space. Rather, disorientation by abundance. Every direction feels like down. The instruments continue to show zero for everything: altitude, pressure, speed. But when Holt looks out, the horizon isn't gone, it's multiplied. Above him, sky. Below him, another sky. And between them, faint silhouettes, triangular, moving slow, leaving trails of rippled distortion behind. They are not aircraft. They move like thoughts. Unpredictable, yet deliberate. Holt tries to record the visuals with the onboard camera. It fails instantly, as though the lens can't decide what to focus on. He glances to the side window and sees something that shouldn't exist, his own reflection, but not matching his movement. His reflection looks back at him calmly, lips unmoving, eyes dilated like black wells. He lifts his hand to the throttle. The reflection doesn't follow. Instead, it mouths three words he cannot hear, but he understands them perfectly. Don't climb higher. He freezes. The radio erupts with static, like applause filtered through wind, and for a heartbeat he swears he hears distant breathing echoing across open sky. Then something passes above the jet, a shadow not cast but self-luminous. It's vast, silent, translucent, a continent of air folded into geometry. The entire atmosphere trembles under it. On the ground, technicians monitoring the anomaly describe a surge of electromagnetic energy equivalent to a thunderstorm, yet no lightning is observed. Instruments briefly register two identical signatures of Holt's aircraft, one ascending, one descending, both transmitting identical serial numbers. One disappears. The other continues on course, as if nothing happened. Inside the anomaly, Holt's perception warps. His compass begins to spin counterclockwise. The needles on his dashboard vibrate in harmonic rhythm to that deep hum. He tries to steady his breathing, but each inhale echoes too long, as though the air itself remembers sound. The cockpit glass starts fogging from the outside in, the condensation forming delicate geometric patterns, spirals, lattices, sigils. He touches the glass. It's warm. Then, through the mist, something forms. A face, faint, upside down, pressed to the other side like a reflection trying to breach through. It's human, or near enough. Its mouth moves slowly, forming his name backward. Tlo. He jerks back. The fog clears instantly. Altitude, 0. Pressure, 0. Everything, 0. He shouts into the radio. Control, confirm. Is this transmission outbound? No response. But then voices. Not one, many, layered over each other, repeating in phase. They're above the clouds, but beneath you. The voice syncs perfectly with the hum of the jet, the rhythm of the turbines, the beat of his own pulse. At 150, Holt sees light, not from outside, but within the sky itself, like veins glowing through translucent flesh. The horizon trembles, and he realizes what he thought was light is actually movement, air bending, folding into corridors. He can see his jet replicated in each corridor, infinite copies flying slightly out of sync. He banks left, and each copy banks a moment later. One hesitates, then continues straight. That one, the rogue reflection, suddenly ascends and vanishes upward into the clouds. Immediately, his altimeter flickers back to life, numbers rushing upward in reverse. His body feels an immense pull downward, as though gravity has chosen a new direction. The cockpit groans, the frame screaming. He grips the control stick and whispers through clenched teeth, "If this is reflection, let me go." The hum stops, for the first time since entering true silence. Then, a voice, not mechanical, not human, whispers directly into the cabin pressure, soft and mournful. "We never held you. You did." The light collapses. At 153, ground radar shows Holt's jet reappearing on normal altitude bands, descending rapidly but controlled. Cabin pressure returns to baseline. The altimeter resets, this time correctly. He lands safely. Tower control reports frost blooming across the plane's surface, forming the same fractal pattern later observed on weather station instruments over the Bighorn Range years later. When Holt exits the cockpit, he's silent. His eyes appear slightly glazed, pupils dilated. He removes his helmet and breathes once, as though learning how again. Technicians swarm the jet. One opens a black box casing and immediately hears a faint heartbeat inside. Not recorded sound, but live resonance. When they replay the flight tape, the moment Holt says, "The sky looks inverted." The playback inverts too. The words play backward but remain intelligible. "It's not the sky that turned." The reverse voice says, "It's us." Days later, Holt begins sketching what he saw. Twin skies, mirrored figures, corridors of light. His superiors confiscate the drawings and classify the report as psychological fatigue due to atmospheric hypoxia. But the telemetry doesn't support that conclusion. Instruments recorded no oxygen loss. Weeks after, Holt vanishes during a follow-up flight. His transponder continues transmitting for exactly 12 seconds after radar contact ends. 12 seconds of clear audio containing his breathing and one final whisper. "I see the ground above me." Then static. In the transcript, an analyst writes in red ink beside his last words, "Inversion complete." The Air Force denies its authenticity. Incident report. Operation NIGHT-LIGHT, Addendum 3. Date, March 14, 1972. Location, Yukon Corridor, Alaska Air Defense Zone ***. Status, anomaly observation, ongoing ***. Ground radar detects no aircraft. Instead, it registers a column of luminescent mist rising from the heart of the storm, straight up 20 miles high, cutting through layers of cloud like a blade of living light. For 12 minutes, every instrument in the control room loses calibration. Frequency bands collapse into a single tone. The technicians swear the air hums inside their chests. Civilians across hundreds of miles report the same vision. Stars falling upward. Over the snowfields, the night itself seems reversed. Where darkness should have swallowed the horizon, light pours instead, thin, vertical, relentless, as if the sky were being inhaled by something immense above the stratosphere. Local photographers attempt to capture it, but their film overexposes to pure white. Witnesses describe the mist not as cloud, but as a living fabric. Threads of vapor twisting into organized shapes, pulsing in slow, deliberate rhythm. One farmer in talk claims it looked like handwriting written across the heavens. Inside the control tower at Elmendorf, Lieutenant Graves, the radar officer on duty, stares at a screen in disbelief. His voice recorder captures his whispered running commentary. No transponder, no aircraft, just a vertical echo, like a signal reflecting off itself. Then silence. The recorder continues running for 9 minutes, capturing nothing but the faint rhythmic vibration, identical in frequency to the heartbeat pattern log from Captain Holt's last transmission 2 hours earlier. At 2:12 hours, satellite imagery confirms the event. The column glows with spectral gradation, shifting from white to amber to a deep, almost biological blue. Atmospheric models predict it should disperse in seconds under jet stream pressure. Instead, it holds shape, anchor at both ends, one buried in the cloud deck, the other tapering into the ionosphere. Astronomers at the University of Fairbanks detect brief dimming of nearby constellations as the column forms. Light from several stars appears to refract, not around it, but through it, like a lens bending starlight backward. For a few seconds, the entire field of stars in the northern hemisphere flickers, as though they are being pulled toward the anomaly. The effect is strongest over Wyoming's Bighorn Mountains, 2,000 miles away, where observers report the aurora shifting to vertical stripes, synchronized with the column's pulse. Everywhere a phenomenon is seen, clocks lag behind by exactly 12 seconds. Civilian radio bands go haywire. AM frequencies begin echoing voices that no one is broadcasting, recorded words from other nights, other storms, other times. A retired pilot recognizes one of them. "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." It's Holt's voice. But Holt is gone. His aircraft, last seen entering the anomaly, never reappears. In the following days, the government seals the area under the guise of atmospheric testing. Dozens of local witnesses are interviewed and released under non-disclosure orders. News outlets call it a rare weather inversion. Yet photographs smuggled out by an Air Force meteorologist tell another story. Each frame shows a perfect vertical line. Too precise, too steady for natural phenomena. In one, lightning appears to arc sideways into the column, vanishing instead of dispersing. Another shows something more haunting. The faint outline of what appears to be an aircraft, suspended motionless within the light, facing upward. The identification number, barely visible on the tail, matches Holt's jet. The official report, redacted for decades, includes data from a balloon probe launched into the phenomenon at 2:20 hours. The probe transmits for 47 seconds before signal loss. Its final readings defy all known physics. Altitude, variable, oscillating between 0 and 20 miles. Air pressure, fluctuating between vacuum and deep-sea density. Magnetic field, inverted polarity, rotating counter to Earth's rotation. Audio, subsonic resonance, cyclical at 1.2 Hz, same frequency as human cardiac rhythm. The last data packet received contains a 3-second burst of audio, filtered and enhanced years later by acoustic analysts. The voice is faint but unmistakable. The horizon is breathing. Witnesses hundreds of miles away swear the event had a metallic tang, like ozone mixed with something older, almost organic. Birds fall silent for a full hour. The aurora remains inverted, its light cascading upward instead of down. For those who saw it, the memory never fades. A geologist stationed in the region writes in his private logbook, "When the stars fell upward, I felt weightless. Not lifted, but remembered." His entry ends abruptly. He was later found unconscious near his observation station, eyes dilated, skin frostbitten, though no temperature drop was recorded that night. Decades later, new analysis of the meteorological data reveals a disturbing pattern. The column of mist didn't merely rise, it folded. When plotted in 3 dimensions, its trajectory forms a double helix, spiraling upward in mirror symmetry. Mathematicians note that the coordinates of each twist correspond exactly to the flight path of Holt's final mission, only reversed. To some, this suggests the phenomenon wasn't consuming his jet. It was replaying it. Every oscillation of the mist light corresponds to a second of Holt's final transmission. The column is, in effect, a memory in the atmosphere, a vertical recording of everything that happened that night, encoded not in sound but in sky. One physicist describes it as the air itself remembering the trauma of what passed through it. In 1989, the phenomenon reappears briefly during a total lunar eclipse. Amateur astronomers capture faint footage, A beam of mist rising again, thinner now, like smoke from invisible fire. Radio interference follows the same pattern as in 1972. On the same night, over the Bighorn Mountains, two hikers witness what they describe as light dripping upward. Their handheld camera records only darkness, but the audio captures 12 seconds of whispering wind that, when spectrally analyzed, reveals modulated patterns spelling Holt in Morse code. The Air Force denies involvement. In 2019, a private weather satellite operated by a Canadian research consortium captures unprecedented imagery. The data shows a faint vertical disturbance in the upper atmosphere over the Yukon, identical in structure to the 1972 column, but now faint, intermittent, flickering like a pulse trying to restart. When converted into a 3D spectrogram, the flicker forms repeating words, inverted sky. Further analysis suggests the signal originates not from space, but from below ground, reflecting upward through air currents. One researcher remarks quietly to a colleague, "It's not gone, it's waiting to rise again." Hours later, all copies of the data vanish from the consortium servers. In declassified radar records released under FOIA request in 2021, a handwritten annotation appears in the margin of the final report. Subject Holt equals unresolved. Column equals signal carrier. If phase shift continues, inversion threshold will be reached. Prepare containment. No one signs it. Now, 50 years after the first event, satellite networks still pick up faint anomalies during certain geomagnetic storms. Every time they appear, ground observers report the same vision. Stars moving the wrong way, ascending, pulsing faintly, like embers in reverse. Pilots flying near the Arctic Circle report instruments briefly showing inverted readings. Altitude 0, compass south where north should be. Some dismiss it as ionospheric distortion. Others whisper a different name. The Holt effect. To this day, no official explanation exists for the 1972 anomaly. The military's weather archives list it as luminescent column event, atmospheric reflection artifact. But the word artifact carries another meaning. Something ancient rediscovered, not newly made. When asked about the incident in a 1993 interview, retired radar technician Lieutenant Graves offered only one comment before walking away. "I watched the sky open that night, and whatever came through, it wasn't coming down. It was going home." Weeks after the interview, Graves vanishes from his residence in Anchorage. His radio scanner remains on, tuned to an unused military frequency, transmitting a single repeating tone at 1.2 hertz, the same rhythm as Holt's heartbeat as the column's pulse, as the inverted light that once climbed 20 miles high into the heavens. Outside, the aurora burns faintly against the horizon. For a moment, it appears to fall upward again. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Air traffic audio log. March 14, 1972, 1 hour 47 minutes and 13 seconds hours. Channel, Secure VHF 2. Flight, Nightlight 1, Captain Raymond Holt. Control Tower, Elmendorf Air Force Base, Anchorage. The tower operators are exhausted. 12 hours into a storm system that refuses to behave like weather, visibility down to nothing. The radar displays pulsing in silent confusion. Static rolls across the speakers like surf. Then, amid the noise, the channel tag for Nightlight 1 crackles to life. A new voice speaks. It is calm, clear, steady. Nightlight 1, this is control. Maintain heading 210, altitude constant. Do not adjust pitch. At first, the words sound routine, but something in the phrasing catches Lieutenant Graves' ear. The syntax is perfect, too perfect. No hesitation, no human breath between syllables. He glances at his supervisor, who frowns. "Did you copy that, Lieutenant?" "Affirmative, sir." "That wasn't us." Before Graves can respond, the same voice repeats, identical in tone, identical in timing, down to the millisecond. Nightlight 1, maintain heading 210. And then, softly, as though leaning closer to the microphone, "Do not climb higher." The control tower falls silent. Everyone hears it. Everyone knows that no one in the room transmitted. Graves tries to override. "Nightlight 1, this is actual control. Confirm your last. Who is transmitting on this frequency? Static. Then Holt's voice returns, strained but audible. Control, confirm. Did you just call me? The voice used my sign. Graves swallows hard. Negative, Captain. That was not from Tower. Then who? Holt's sentence fractures into noise. The channel blooms with overlapping echoes of his own voice, looping fragments backward and forward. Maintain heading. Do not climb. Nightlight 1. Nightlight 1. For several seconds, the control room fills with a mechanical chorus of Holt speaking to himself from nowhere. Technicians scramble to isolate the feed. The spectrograph shows something bizarre. 2 identical vocal signatures, one inverted. The echo isn't a recording. It's a mirror signal, phase reversed, transmitting simultaneously at a half-second delay. Someone or something on Holt's frequency is anticipating his responses before he gives them. The anomaly deepens. The new voice resumes, quieter now, almost intimate. Control copies, Raymond. No one in the tower ever uses his first name. Return course when horizon corrects. Identify yourself. Graves demands. Already did, the voice replies. You call me first. A low hum rolls through every monitor. The room's fluorescent lights flicker, cycling in time with the modulation of the voice. Static ripples like wind through metal. The technicians hear something underneath the words. A faint harmonic that shouldn't exist in analog transmission. The waveform carries overtones matching human cardiac rhythm. One operator mutters, "It's like the voice has a pulse." Meanwhile, in Holt's cockpit, the conversation continues. Control, I read duplicate signal. Source appears above my position. Request clarification. Silence. Then the calm voice again. Altitude 0, Raymond. Negative. I'm at 22,000. 0. It repeats gently, like a correction to child. Look outside. He does. The sky is folded into reflection. Stars below, clouds above. His horizon has vanished. The altimeter indeed reads 0. Control, Holt whispers. The sky looks inverted. The voice responds immediately, his call sign preceding his sentence by half a breath, as if it knew what he was going to say. Nightlight 1. The sky looks inverted. Maintain observation. Do not fear the descent. Holt freezes. His own words, replayed before he finishes them. How are you doing this? We are not doing. We are remembering. Back in the tower, the engineers patch in secondary receivers. Every attempt to jam the phantom signal fails. The voice continues seamlessly through all frequencies, adapting like water flowing around stones. Graves leans into the microphone. Nightlight 1, abort mission. Repeat, abort. The response arrives before he releases the transmit button. Copy, aborting mission. But Holt hasn't spoken yet. The waveform belongs to him. A junior officer whispers, "Sir, it's answering before he does." 2:00 hours. The voice grows fainter, more distant, as though sinking beneath water. Yet every time the technicians mute the channel, the hum leaks through the room itself. The glass, the walls, even their own voices begin to harmonize unintentionally. The tape later reveals background muttering aligning into the same cadence. Nightlight 1. Maintain course, do not climb. It's as if the room itself had learned the phrase. Forensic analysis decades later uncovers that the mysterious voice carries minute variations in amplitude corresponding to seismic readings from the Yukon corridor at that exact moment. The ground and the transmission share identical rhythm. In other words, the voice wasn't broadcast through airwaves. It was transmitted through Earth. Holt's final confirmed exchange. Holt, Control, what am I hearing? Unknown. Your echo, Raymond. Holt, I don't understand. Unknown. You will when we finish falling. Seconds later, the channel distorts into layered tones. A stack of voices reciting his call sign in unison, each slightly delayed, forming a chord too complex for human throats. Then, a flash of silence so absolute the recording equipment registers negative decibels. Sound erased rather than absent. The next audible moment is Holt shouting. My reflection is answering back. The line cuts. The control tower logs the channel as dead, but the audio continues recording faint subharmonics for exactly 12 seconds, the same duration of every recurrence of the Holt effect across subsequent decades. During those 12 seconds, the recording equipment, though disconnected from power, captures a whisper. Control, this is Nightlight 1, standing by for instructions. Graves, reviewing the tape later, notes and handwriting. Signal timestamp precedes Holt's transmission by 012. Origin unknown. The implication. The voice wasn't following Holt's call sign, it was leading it. In the years that follow, fragments of the phantom communication leak through classified circles. Linguists find the intonation flawless yet inhuman, each word mathematically equidistant in timing, micro-variations following Fibonacci spacing. Acoustic engineers propose a chilling theory. The entity on Holt's channel was not imitating him, but predicting him, responding from a point displaced 12 seconds ahead in time, the same 12-second offset recorded whenever the anomaly manifests. Thus, every instance of the voice was Holt's own future transmission, echoing backward, a reflection speaking first. Witnesses describe hearing similar voices during later anomalies over the Bighorn Mountains and the Arctic corridor, always calm, always precise, always using the listener's own name. One pilot reported hearing his call sign whispered in his headset before takeoff, though his radio was unplugged. The Air Force calls these reports psychological feedback under stress. But a single memo declassified in 1998 contradicts the official line. In the margin, an anonymous officer writes, "They're not calling from somewhere else. They're calling from one else." In 2015, digital restoration of the original reel uncovers frequencies beneath human hearing, Holt's name repeating in infrasonic pulses. When mapped visually, the waveform forms a near-perfect mirror image of the Yukon mountain range where his jet vanished. At its center sits a single word encoded in phase modulation, control. But the frequency signature indicates it wasn't transmitted to control. It was control itself, reflected back. And even now, on clear Arctic nights, amateur radio operators scanning cold frequencies claim to intercept a whisper that begins without static, every phrase calm and deliberate. Nightlight 1, this is control. Maintain heading 210. They answer for the thrill of it, knowing it's just a story. Then the same voice replies, soft, certain, familiar, using their names before they give them. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Declassified transcript. Nightlight recon/flight recorder 2B segment 4. Timestamp. 1 hour 52 minutes and 3 seconds to 1 hour 59 minutes and 44 seconds. Altitude. Recorded variable/inconclusive. Pilot. Captain Raymond Holt. Aircraft. RF-4 Phantom II. Condition. Data corruption between frames 83 to 141. Recovered black box data skips forward. A jagged blur of engine noise, pressure alarms, and faint breathing jumps to sudden clarity. Then comes a change. Holt's voice. Moments ago he had spoken like an officer, clipped, controlled, deliberate. Now something in him trembles. Discipline thins, replaced by wonder that borders on fear. Holt. It's rearranged in the air. He says it slowly, not as a report, but as a confession. 1 hour 52 minutes and 11 seconds. Wind microphones pick up a pattern, not turbulence but rhythmic modulation, like waves folding through a liquid. The pressure sensors register micro-vacuum pockets forming and collapsing around the fuselage. Each event coincides with a rise in cabin temperature, then an equal drop. Holt. Visual distortion ahead. No, not visual, spatial. Clouds aren't clouds. They're segments. Something's shifting them, slotting them into place. Analysts later overlay the waveform of his voice with the radar telemetry. The inflections in his speech align perfectly with pulses in the electromagnetic field. The implication is absurd yet consistent. Holt is describing events as a phenomenon builds itself around him in real time. 1 hour 53 minutes and 2 seconds. The data recorder freezes on a single word, then resumes mid-sentence. Holt. Like glass turning inside out. The air isn't moving. It's being rewritten. He inhales sharply. The oxygen sensors spike, then flatten, External air composition shows trace amount of argon and something unclassified, an isotope resembling oxygen but with reverse spin polarity. The official post-analysis calls it non-existent in natural atmosphere. Inside the cockpit, the microphones record faint resonance. Every loose screw, every panel seem humming at different pitch, as though the plane itself is tuning to phenomenon. 1 hour, 53 minutes, and 45 seconds. Holt, static on canopy surface. It's forming lines, geometric. Concentric arcs rotating counterclockwise. Wait, the arcs are breathing. A pause. Breathing quickens. He speaks again, softer in awe. Holt, the air looks alive. The sound engineer who remastered this tape decades later wrote in the margin, "This is where language stops working." 1 hour, 54 minutes, and 10 seconds. The radar altimeter loops between 000 and 999. Temperature outside drops to minus 110 degrees Celsius, yet frost forms inside the canopy. Each pulse of frost traces the same spiral shape Holt described earlier. He mutters to himself, unaware his mic is still open. Holt, it's learning form, using pressure like fingers, rearranging air into memory. The words air into memory repeat 3 times, then fade under mechanical humming. 1 hour and 55 minutes. A new noise floods the channel. Deep, resonant, harmonic. Analysts later find its base frequency matches the Schumann resonance of Earth multiplied by 3. Holt, control, are you reading this? There's structure in the atmosphere, architecture, invisible until it moves. When it moves, everything else remembers where it was. No response. The black box's secondary channel records a whisper identical in cadence to Holt's own voice, delayed by 0.8 seconds. Echo. Everything else remembers where it was. Whether this is feedback, interference, or temporal duplication is still disputed. 1 hour, 55 minutes, and 47 seconds. The aircraft accelerates without engine input. Instruments show 0 thrust yet rising velocity. Holt doesn't question it. His tone now carries something like reverence. Holt, I think it's carrying me. The air has density, direction. It's flowing uphill. He pauses. No, not uphill. Inward. 1 hour, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. The recorder captures an extended sigh, almost relief. Holt, there's color now. Pale gold, moving like fluid mathematics. Each layer folds the next. I can see through to the shape beneath. Not light, not shadow, just order. The word order echoes through cockpit metal, creating secondary reverberation visible on the spectrogram. Engineers later describe it as self-echoing metal, impossible without an external acoustic source. 1 hour, 56 minutes, and 51 seconds. The autopilot disengages by itself. Holt does not protest. Holt, my controls aren't fighting me anymore. They're part of it. When I think left, the jet inclines before my hand moves. It's reading intention, not input. In the data logs, throttle and aileron values change exactly 0.7 seconds before Holt's physical controls register contact. Holt, this isn't flight. This is translation. 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 19 seconds. He gasps suddenly. Heart rate spikes. Holt, wait! The air outside is forming faces. Analysts slow the recording by 800%. The background sound reveals layered frequencies, forming harmonic intervals matching phonetic structures of human vowels. Holt, they're not faces, they're masks. Each one disappears when I look straight at it. He chuckles once, the short, unbelieving laugh of someone past fear. They don't want me to see them directly, only through reflection. 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 55 seconds. Telemetry goes erratic. Altimeter frozen. Compass reversing polarity. External temperature climbing again. Holt's voice drops to a whisper. Holt, it's writing itself across the sky. Each movement leaves a mark. Not vapor, not light, memory. Every trail a new equation. He pauses. I think I'm inside the recording. The black box isn't capturing it. It's participating. At this exact second, the flight recorder logs an impossible data entry. Device source, external. For 12 frames, the box identifies itself as listener. 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 10 seconds. Holt, control, if you can hear me, it's rearranging the air into shape, into pattern. The tone in his voice is almost devotional. Imagine wind turned to architecture. Imagine pressure holding memory like glass. He laughed softly. It's beautiful. You'd never believe what air can remember. Then, quieter, it's showing me something. Sensors pick up a brief EM pulse that mirrors his heartbeat exactly. His voice slows, as if the surrounding medium thickens. Holt, there's a corridor, made of sound. It bends light. I think it wants me to follow. The jet's accelerometers record forward motion without change in engine power. Analysts later determined the aircraft covered 22 nautical miles in 0.6 seconds, an impossibility under any known propulsion. 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 46 seconds. The hum rises. Holt's tone, once controlled, now breaks into reverent whisper. Holt, I can see the ground above me. The horizon folds upward, like pages turning backward. Everything rearranged. Even me? Static. Then he speaks again, calm, assured. It's not consuming air. It's reorganizing it, as if the sky were code-correcting itself. The following 30 seconds are filled with overlapping murmurs of his own voice, each fragment saying a different line. I understand now. It remembers us. We were the anomaly. Everything breathes the same pattern. 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 15 seconds. The cockpit microphone picks up a final word. Faint, exhaled more than spoken. Holt, beautiful. Then a high-frequency chime, the kind produced when magnetic tape erases itself. All subsequent data is blank. Post-incident analysis. When the black box was retrieved months later, its casing was intact, but the magnetic ribbon inside showed microscopic alterations. The oxide particles had aligned into geometric spirals resembling atmospheric flow patterns from a night of the disappearance. The recording, when played backward through analog hardware, produces faint resonances matching the structure of human speech, syllables repeating Holt's final line. It's rearranged in the air. Acoustic physicists at Los Alamos concluded that the medium of recording had somehow captured not only sound but pressure imprint, implying the air surrounding the tape had been encoded into it. In effect, the atmosphere continued writing even after the plane vanished. Modern spectrographic reconstruction extends a signal past the official cutoff. The additional 3 seconds reveal a continuation of Holt's whisper, stretched by distortion. It's rearranging the air, and soon it will rearrange us. Then a second voice, same timbre, same breath, but inverted in phase, answers. Already did. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Declassified hearing transcript. Congressional Subcommittee on Defense Anomalies, Session 7. Date, September 18, 1994. Location, Washington, D.C. Witness, Retired Air Operations Officer Dana L. Rhodes. Classification level, formerly top secret, declassified 2018. Years later, long after the official inquiries into the Nightlight Recon incident had been closed, a retired operator named Dana Rhodes sat before Congressional Subcommittee convened to investigate historical anomalies in aerial defense records. The room was small, windowless, pale green walls sweating under the fluorescent lights. A row of microphones lined the table like waiting mouths. Rhodes, now in her 60s, still wore her service pin. Her hand shook slightly, not from age but from the memory of things that refused to rest quietly in her mind. When the chairman asked her to state her name for the record, her voice cracked once before steadying. Dana Louise Rhodes, retired operations analyst, Elmendorf Control Tower, Alaska Defense Zone. Service years 1965 to 1985. Then came the question every hearing built toward. What happened the night Captain Raymond Holt disappeared? Rhodes hesitated only long enough to look each committee member in the eye. Whatever that was, she said finally, it wasn't extraterrestrial. A pause so long you could hear the air conditioning hum. It was extratemporal. The stenographer's keys stopped mid-stroke. The chairman leaned forward. Could you clarify, Ms. Rhodes? What exactly do you mean by extratemporal? Rhodes folded her hands, as if bracing herself against invisible pressure. Sir, I mean it didn't come from space. It came from time. Not ahead, not behind, sideways. We were looking the wrong direction. She explained that on the night of March 14th, 1972, she was one of two operators on duty who monitored Holt's channel after the phantom transmission began. For years she'd stayed silent, bound by oath and fear. But with most of her colleagues dead, she decided the truth should finally have witnesses. Her testimony filled over 4 hours of transcript. The signal that spoke through Holt's frequency wasn't radio interference. It was temporal feedback. I didn't believe that at first. Thought it was stress, a trick of harmonics. But the analysis logs we filed that night, they show a 12-second phase inversion on the timecode itself. Not sound. Time. Committee members exchanged uneasy glances. Do you mean to suggest? I'm not suggesting anything, Rhodes interrupted. I'm telling you. The recording played before we received it. The signal arrived early. We were answering our own broadcast before it was made. She recounted how the Air Force classified the anomaly under Project Winter Echo, a small post-Holt task force established to study residual effects in the upper atmosphere. The team's early findings suggested that sections of troposphere over the Yukon corridor displayed measurable temporal density, layers of air that reflected not electromagnetic waves, but events themselves. Think of it like fog made of memory, Rhodes said. Every aircraft that passed through left a kind of imprint. Over time, those imprints began to speak back. She took a breath, hands tightening. We kept calling it reflection, resonance, inversion. We were wrong. It wasn't echoing, it was revising. When asked about the phrase extraterrestrial, she smiled sadly. Everybody wanted it to be aliens. It's easier that way. Something from above, something we can point at. But we checked every angle, every radar scope. The interference didn't come from the sky. It came from within the radar return itself. It came from the moment. The transcript records murmuring in the chamber before the chairman calls for silence. Rhodes continues. Imagine dropping a stone in water. The ripples move outward, right? Now imagine if one ripple moved backward, not through space, but through time. That's what Holt flew into. The ripple that came before the stone. She reached into a folder of yellow documents, declassified only weeks earlier, and laid them on the table. Pages of telemetry, photocopied graphs, fragments of handwritten notes. One note, dated 1974, reads, Subject H, atmospheric interference still active. Time delay echo recurs at 12-second intervals. Recommend cease further flights through affected corridor. Risk of self-interference. Self-interference, Rhodes explained, was their term for a phenomenon that occurred when an object's temporal echo overlapped with its present self. It's not destruction. It's negotiation, she said softly. When two moments try to occupy the same air, one has to rewrite the other. That's what Holt meant when he said it was rearranging the air. At 10:47 a.m., a congressman from Oregon pressed her. You're saying time rewrote him? Rhodes met his gaze. No, sir, I'm saying he rewrote it. The room erupted in whispers. The chairman rapped his gavel until silence returned. Ms. Rhodes, are you implying Captain Holt was aware of the phenomenon? That he somehow interacted with it? He didn't just interact with it, she replied. He joined it. Then she recited from memory Holt's final recorded words. It's rearranging the air. She explained how, months after the incident, the research team replayed that recording through low-frequency resonators in a sealed chamber. The air inside the room thickened, condensed, shimmered faintly. Instruments briefly registered temperature drop and reverse pressure gradients. As the atmosphere remembered Holt's voice and tried to rebuild what he saw. That's when we realized, Rhodes continued, whatever he became, it wasn't lost. It was archived. Her statement caused unease even among the physicists present. Senator Talbot, skeptical, leaned in. Ms. Rhodes, you're talking about time as though it's conscious. Not conscious, she corrected gently. Responsive. A medium that resists being empty. We think space is static, but it's not. Every sound, every light, Every breath leaves a fingerprint. Usually those fingerprints fade. Sometimes, under certain conditions, they push back. She glanced toward the microphones, as if expecting them to pulse. That night, it pushed back. The subcommittee records show multiple pauses, as the members debate proceeding further. Several sections remain redacted, replaced by the note, off-record discussion, classified topic. When the hearing resumes, the chairman asks if she believes the phenomenon still exists. Yes. Rhodes answers without hesitation. We never shut it down. How do you turn off whether that remembers? She explains that atmospheric sensors in the Yukon corridor still occasionally detect phase flickers, minor distortions lasting 12 seconds, consistent with earlier patterns. During those flickers, radio transmissions sometimes echo ahead of their source. Pilots report hearing instructions seconds before they're given. Sometimes, she says, the air still tries to finish Holt's sentence. Near the end of her testimony, Rhodes makes one final request: to play an archive tape, a fragment from 1980 when the anomaly reactivated briefly over the Bighorn Mountains. The recording begins with static. Then a man's voice, calm, steady, impossibly familiar, speaks. Nightlight 1, this is Control. Maintain heading 210. Rhodes lets the tape play, her eyes closed. The subcommittee listens as, faintly, a second voice overlays the first, identical in tone but displaced by a fraction of a second. Control, this is Nightlight 1. Standing by for instructions. The chairman, uneasy, signals a technician to stop the playback. Ms. Rhodes, who is speaking, she opens her eyes. That's the problem, sir. They both are. Her final words before adjournment become the most cited line in the hearing's official summary. You keep asking if it was alien. Aliens would have been easier. What we found didn't come from another planet. It came from another moment. And it didn't visit us. It's always been here, waiting for us to catch up. When the hearing concludes, Rhodes leaves the room under escort, refusing interviews. The transcript circulates quietly through defense archives for decades before eventual declassification. Addendum notes from the reviewing archivist read, subject's testimony shows consistent psychological coherence. No evidence of delusion. Her technical recollection matches surviving sensor data. Recommend further study of temporal echo phenomenon. Possibility. Holt anomaly represents recursive weather system, time localized and self-aware. The file closes with single line, handwritten in the margin by an unknown reviewer. If time can remember, maybe it can regret. Outside that same night, a maintenance worker at Andrews Air Force Base reports strange interference on a dormant radio band. He records 12 seconds of faint transmission, the calm voice of a woman repeating. Whatever that was, it wasn't extraterrestrial. Pause. It was extratemporal. Then the signal dissolves into silence, followed by a breath that isn't hers. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Classified Geospatial Intelligence Report, Department of Defense/Division of Anomalous Reconnaissance. Subject, post-incident surveillance of coordinates transmitted by Captain Raymond Holt, call sign, Nightlight 1. Date range, March 14, 1972 to October 8, 1998. Status, open file/indeterminate. Holt's last transmitted coordinates point to an empty plateau, a barren stretch of permafrost and shale lying north of the Yukon corridor, 30 miles from the nearest flight path and 70 from the nearest habitation. On paper, it is nothing. No structures, no vegetation, only wind and ice. But almost immediately after the disappearance, surveillance imagery begins to disagree with itself. March 15, 1972, 24 hours after the incident, the first reconnaissance flyover captures high-altitude photographs under perfect visibility. The plateau appears undisturbed, a dull gray plain fringed by ridges, dotted with frost heaves. Nothing out of place. Nothing that could swallow a jet. Analysts mark the coordinates with a red circle and archive the photo. March 22nd. A second pass. Same equipment, same altitude. Yet the contours of the terrain are subtly altered. The ridge to the east appears closer. The central depression, previously elliptical, now forms a perfect circle, 300 meters across, depth unknown. To Topography cannot shift that cleanly without seismic activity, but no quake registers on regional sensors. The image analyst writes in pencil on the margin. Terrain does not align with earlier photo. Possible optical distortion, or a photograph of a different place entirely. The coordinates, however, are identical. April, June 1972. Successive satellite passes compound the inconsistency. Each new image shows minor reconfigurations. Shadows where none existed, rock formations that vanish, a faint lattice pattern crawling across the surface like veins of lighter soil. When overlaid sequentially, the images reveal an unnerving motion, as if the plateau is slowly breathing. The effect is not cinematic drift. The movement is structural. Surveyors describe it as the land exhaling itself one layer at a time. Infrared scans show abnormal warmth emanating from the center of the depression, a circular halo 10 degrees hotter than the surrounding ice. Yet ground temperature readings remain sub-zero. The heat exists only to satellites, visible to sensors, invisible to thermometers. August 1972. A reconnaissance drone sent to collect soil samples never returns. Its last camera feed shows a thin mist sweeping across the plateau, rising vertically. Within seconds, the signal fragments into mirrored images, each frame reversed horizontally and temporally, playing backward before transmission ends. Black box data from the drone contains Holt's coordinates repeated in Morse through background static. The Air Force issues a public statement citing equipment malfunction during polar operation. Internally, the incident is renamed Echo Site 1. 1973 to 1975. Every new satellite model sent over the region reports interference precisely over the plateau. Not random static, but harmonic distortion. Pulses recurring every 12 seconds. Analysts note that this interval matches a gap present in the last recording of Holt's transmission. A memo from 1974 reads, "Either the signal is still active or the landscape itself has become the transmitter. Attempts to triangulate the source yield impossible results. Elevation 0, even though the plateau sits at nearly 4,000 feet. 1976. A ground expedition finally reaches the site. 3 men. They report nothing unusual at first. Flat terrain, high winds, magnetic compass deviation. On the second night, one of them, Sergeant Neil Morano, writes in his logbook, "It feels like standing inside an old photograph. Edges faded, air too still. At dusk, the light bends wrong. The mountains on the horizon look closer, as if the plateau is expanding to meet them." The following morning, radio contact ceases. 2 weeks later, a rescue team finds their camp intact. Food uneaten, gear untouched. The only trace of life is a single set of footprints circling the perimeter of the depression, walking both directions simultaneously. The official record lists cause of disappearance, environmental exposure. The plateau is closed to civilian access under the pretext of hazardous terrain. 1978 to 1984. New imaging satellites employ synthetic aperture radar to penetrate cloud cover. Every scan reveals structural anomalies beneath the surface, repeating geometric cavities forming a spiral descending at least 2 miles deep. Each cavity reflects radar at a slightly different time offset, producing an effect one analyst calls echo delay through matter. When the data is converted to audio frequencies, it produces a tone almost identical to Holt's voice saying, "Maintain course." The tone repeats every year on the same date, March 14th, 1989. A classified research team at Los Alamos compiles all available imagery. When stacked sequentially and accelerated into time-lapse simulation, the plateau seems to evolve through stages. 1972, barren. 1975, circular depression forming. 1978, inner ridges begin spiraling. 1982, faint central glow in infrared. 1989, structure complete, resembling an enormous fingerprint pressed into the earth. Geologists reviewing the model disagree whether the transformation is real or digital contamination, but the pattern remains consistent across every independent satellite system, including Soviet ones. One Soviet cosmonaut aboard Soyuz T-10 observes the region from orbit and describes a soft phosphorescent bloom on the ground, Not cloud, not aurora, perfectly round. His notes, declassified after the fall of the USSR, match U.S. observations exactly to the second. 1990s, civilian discovery. Commercial mapping satellites begin picking up fragments of the anomaly, though automated correction algorithms remove them as data corruption. Still, a handful of raw images leak into amateur astronomy circles. They call it the Holt Halo, a mysterious circle in the north that changes shape between uploads. One image, verified by multiple sources, shows something extraordinary. Within the glowing depression stands a dark silhouette resembling the outline of an aircraft fuselage. The proportions match an RF-4 Phantom II. By the next satellite pass, the shadow is gone. 1994, Dana Rhodes' testimony. When retired operator Dana Rhodes testifies to Congressional Subcommittee, she references these same coordinates, confirming that the plateau continues to shift its own geometry. The ground there isn't ground anymore, she tells him. It's atmosphere that forgot how to rise. Her statement is dismissed as metaphor. Yet 1 month later, seismic sensors near the area record rhythmic pulses, 12-second intervals, as always, with no associated earthquakes. The pattern resembles breathing. 1996. A weather balloon released by an environmental agency drifts unexpectedly toward the coordinates. For 13 minutes, its GPS signal loops, showing it rising and descending simultaneously. When recovered over 300 miles away, the onboard camera contains 12 photographs of the plateau taken from above. Each frame is identical except one detail. The cloud shadows move upward. 1998, last confirmed imagery. The newest high-resolution satellite from a National Reconnaissance Office captures the clearest picture yet. The plateau now resembles a vast concave mirror, smooth, glass-like, reflecting the sky with unnatural precision. But the reflected clouds do not match the real ones overhead. They move independently, slower, as if the reflection belongs to a slightly earlier moment. Technicians studying the image realize with quiet horror that the mirror clouds correspond perfectly to weather data recorded 12 seconds before the photograph was taken. The plateau, it seems, does not just reflect the sky. It reflects time itself, displaced by Holt's final interval. Analyst summary, redacted section, later declassified. We have monitored terrain shift for 26 years. Each alteration follows a consistent direction, outward from a central point corresponding to Nightlight 1's last known position. The phenomenon appears to be spreading at the rate of 0.4 meters per year, rewriting surrounding geology as it expands. Recommend quarantine of airspace indefinitely. The plateau may represent an interface, not a location, a place where memory manifests as landscape. The earth under those coordinates does not erode, it revises. Local legend among Alaskan pilots now calls the area the still ground. They say radio static thickens when flying near it, voices overlapping their own transmissions by 12 seconds. Some swear they've heard a man whisper through the interference. Altitude 0, horizon corrected. When they check their instruments, everything reads normal. On the 50th anniversary of Holt's disappearance, a satellite in polar orbit passes over the coordinates once more. The image it returns is blank white, no shadow, no relief, no texture. Analysts assume snow cover. But when brightness is reduced, faint writing emerges in the gradient of the terrain. Geometric ridges forming letters visible only from orbit. The word reads, returned. Seconds later, the satellite's data stream freezes, then resumes as though nothing happened. The official explanation cites magnetic interference. Unofficially, within internal communications, one engineer adds a note to the log before the file closes forever. The plateau changed again. It's not empty anymore. It's waiting. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Field report, Department of Energy/Division of Radiological and Atmospheric Phenomena. Subject, Site Survey, Holt Plateau Coordinates. Date, July 3, 2003. Lead investigator, Dr. Miriam Adissa. Status, ongoing restricted. The search team arrives at dawn. The plateau spread before them like a wound sealed with glass. From above it seemed pale and featureless, a disk of silvered soil framed by dark tundra. But up close, the surface is unmistakably unnatural, a melted radius of Earth fused into mirror-like obsidian, stretching nearly 400 meters across. The soil hasn't burned, it's transmuted. Every footstep crunches, as though on brittle ceramic. The reflection under their boots isn't true. The team's shadows move a heartbeat late, repeating gestures after they are made. When the first Geiger counter switches on, the quiet air fills with a rhythmic click-click, click-click, click-click. Steady, deliberate, eerily biological. "It's beating," one technician whispers, like it's alive. The others laugh nervously until they realize it's not a joke. Every counter, 3 different models, all calibrated separately, ticks in unison, each pulse matching the same interval, 12 seconds. They set up a perimeter and begin spectral scans. Radiation is present, but not in any recognizable isotope pattern. The gamma readings oscillate with precise periodicity, as though modulated by intention rather than decay. Dr. Adissa kneels to collect a sample. The fused soil resists a chisel at first, then gives with a soft snap of glass under tension. Inside, the material isn't black but translucent amber, riddled with microscopic bubbles. Under magnification, those bubbles reveal geometric order, tiny hexagonal lattices aligned toward magnetic north. Natural glass doesn't organize, she notes into her recorder. This was instructed to. When sunlight strikes the shard, it emits a faint tone, too low for human ears but strong enough to register on their instruments. 1.2 hertz. The same frequency recorded from Captain Holt's final flight 31 years earlier. By midday, the wind begins to shift. The air smells faintly metallic, like rain on old batteries. Every sensor begins reporting phantom readings. Temperature spikes, localized pressure drops. Then the Geiger counters accelerate, click, 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 then fall silent, then resume their heartbeat rhythm. The oscillation spreads to the equipment cases. Metal frames vibrate softly in sync. The sound engineer monitoring the data feed whispers. It's not radiation. It's communication. They record the pattern for 3 minutes before the clicks merge into continuous tone, like a deep inhalation through steel. The vibration fades. Sample 3A, taken from the crater's edge, undergoes thermal testing later that day. When heated above 400 degrees Celsius, it liquefies briefly, forming surface ripples that reorganize themselves into faint concentric rings. Under microscope, those rings reveal microscopic indentations forming numbers, latitude and longitude. They match Holt's last coordinates exactly. The material, it seems, is remembering its origin. At 15:20, the team deploys a drone to capture aerial imagery. The live feed displays a perfect circle of light at the crater's center, though to the naked eye, there is nothing there. Infrared shows temperature drop. Ultraviolet shows movement. Something invisible stirs the dust into spirals that rise, hover, and collapse as though obeying silent breath. Then the Geiger counters begin again, faster, but still rhythmic. Click, 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 click. Suddenly, they sync perfectly with the pulse sensors attached to the investigators themselves. Heart monitors register faint interference. Everyone's cardiac rhythm aligns to the radiation pulses within 30 seconds. Dr. Adissa orders evacuation. That night, camp 5 kilometers away, the team can still see the faint shimmer of the crater reflecting starlight. Except the stars it mirrors don't match the real sky. They move slower, tracing old constellations lost to precession centuries ago. The reflection's out of date, one technician murmurs. It's showing a sky from another time. Lab analysis, following week. Back at the containment facility in Anchorage, they run spectroscopic tests on the collected samples. Results defy classification. Elemental composition. 42% silicon, 26% iron, trace vanadium, but with isotope ratios impossible in terrestrial geology. Crystalline structure, amorphous, yet self-correcting when fractured. Thermal reactivity, absorbs energy, then re-emits it 12 seconds later. When left in darkness, the glass faintly glows from within, pulsing to that same 12-second rhythm. When exposed to radio frequencies, it emits low audio hums resembling overlapping human voices. speaking words no one recognizes, but whose cadence mirrors recorded pilot transmissions from 1972. Acoustic analysis confirms the waveform carries two modulated speech tracks, one forward, one reversed, each perfectly time-aligned. The translation algorithm provides a partial transcript. Altitude 0. Horizon corrected. The air remembers. Field return. September 2003. Satellite images reveal new distortion across the plateau. The reflective zone has expanded by nearly 50 meters since the initial discovery. At its perimeter, snow and vegetation appear slightly scorched, not by fire but by radiation resembling Cherenkov light in the atmosphere. Under certain conditions, passing clouds refract into spectral bands, forming an inverted halo that lingers long after clouds themselves dissipate. Locals begin referring to the phenomenon as the glass heart. 2004 incident. A second expedition returns to monitor the expansion. Upon arrival, they find all previous markers gone. Their GPS devices glitch, cycling between present coordinates and readings exactly 12 seconds earlier. Magnetic compasses spin. Watches freeze. At 9:12, one operator reports hearing faint breathing through his headset. Though comms are silent, the Geiger counter on his belt begins beating again, matching his own pulse. "I think it's sync with me," he says over the radio. "When I hold my breath, it stops." He exhales. The clicking resumes. The team flees the crater's edge. Later, reviewing audio from his recorder, they discover that during each interval of silence, a second sound occupied the same frequency band. An inverted heartbeat, like an answer. Later analysis. The material continues to mutate in containment. Each shard exhibits behavior dependent on proximity to living tissue. When held near human skin, the radiation pattern reorganizes, lowering intensity but increasing coherence, as though calibrating itself. After prolonged exposure, samples begin emitting faint audio sequences, slow, rhythmic repetitions of Morse-like pulses corresponding to the letters H, O, L, T. One researcher remarks dryly, "The ground's still transmitting." In 2005, the Department of Energy officially reclassifies the Holt Plateau as a radiological memory site. A report circulated among senior officials reads, "Preliminary evidence suggests fusion of soil was not caused by conventional heat, but by structural reconfiguration at molecular level, possible realignment of atomic bonds through temporal shear. Material shows signs of preserving environmental data as physical geometry. Plateau may constitute a natural archive produced by energy release associated with Nightlight 1's disappearance." The document's final line, handwritten, is more poetic than scientific. "The earth there listens still. It ticks like a heart that never learned to stop." 2006, civilian encounter. A geology student hiking near the restricted boundary collects a small shard of the mirrored glass. 2 nights later, he brings it to a local diner, showing patrons how it beats when placed on a table. The shard emits a dull throb that causes coffee to ripple in perfect intervals. Witnesses claim to hear faint murmurs from within it. Phrase is too soft to decipher, though one person insists she heard a man whisper, "Stay on course." By morning, the student is gone. The shard remains, inert. The counter ticks 12 times before silence. Modern researchers examining the preserved artifacts note that the radiation no longer decays. It loops, endlessly repeating the same half-life curve every 12 seconds, resetting before decline. In theory, it could persist forever without changing intensity. Physicist Corin Havel calls it temporal respiration. It's as if the glass is breathing time in and out. What we're measuring isn't contamination, it's continuity. In 2018, satellite passes once again reveal the plateau glowing faintly at night, visible only in infrared. The pulse remains constant. Weather sensors nearby detect subtle fluctuations in atmospheric density, matching human heartbeat rhythm. When these readings are converted to sound, they form a slow, resonant cadence, the echo of a breathing engine. Spectral decomposition isolates a single whispered fragment woven into the noise. The reflection is almost complete. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Recovered materials inventory Nightlight Recon, Case File NR 72H. Date of recovery, May 12, 1974. Location, secondary excavation zone, 3 kilometers east of the Holt Plateau. Recovered items, flight helmet fragments, a rust-pock compass, 1 torn mission logbook, and a single Polaroid photograph, partially melted along its edges. Custodian, Office of Aerospace Archives, Section Delta 4. Classification, Top Secret / Declassified 2022. Among Holt's recovered belongings was a Polaroid, warped, water-stained, yet still miraculously legible. It shows the inside of the RF-4 Phantom's cockpit, the panel lights glowing amber through frost. Outside the canopy, night clouds shimmer faintly with that impossible golden mist first described by ground radar. But what seizes every observer's attention is the reflection. Centered in the curved glass of the cockpit window, shining through scratches and condensation, is a luminous human face that isn't Holt's. Initial examination, 1974. Photo analysts at Elmendorf enlarged the image to 800% magnification. Holt's silhouette is visible in the lower corner. Helmet on, mouth slightly open, gaze fixed forward. The reflected face, however, looks directly into the lens. Its features are neither distorted nor doubled. The reflection aligns with the cockpit's curvature, as if it occupies the same physical space on the opposite side of the glass. Under ultraviolet light, the emulsion glows unevenly. A halo of phosphorescence outlines the stranger's face, fading into grain like dissolving breath. Forensic comparison with Holt's service photo finds a 0.83 match in facial geometry, similar enough to be him, but shifted, older, eyes heavier, expression almost tranquil. Analysts note, subject appears to be looking through himself. The photograph speaks back. When technicians attempt to rephotograph the Polaroid for archiving, the negatives develop with faint overexposure rings every 12 seconds. The same rhythm traced in the plateau's radiation and in Holt's final radio bursts. Audio recorded during the enlargement process picks up a soft intermittent hiss that, when slowed and equalized, forms whispered syllables. Spectrogram translation reveals fragments of English words arranged backward. Hold, steady horizon breathing. The lab's power fluctuates each time the shutter flashes. Eventually the photo is sealed inside a Faraday sleeve and stored in the dark. Psychological evaluation of observers. Anyone spending prolonged time studying the original print reports the same sensation. A pressure behind the eyes, a faint echo preceding their own heartbeat, and a conviction that the reflection is changing position between glances. One archivist insisted on his third, viewing the luminous face, smiled slightly, though the photograph is chemically stable. Another swears the background cloud behind the canopy had begun to part, revealing stars arranged in unfamiliar constellations. A memo dated July 1975 summarizes, the image behaves as a surface of memory rather than a static record. Recommends cessation of direct observation beyond 60 seconds. Later analysis, 1986. High-resolution digital scanning yields new anomalies. Infrared exposure reveals faint fingerprints along the edges. 5 impressions belonging neither to Holt nor to any recovery team member. The ridge patterns are mirror-reversed, as if pressed from inside the photo. When enhanced, the reflected face exhibits dual pupils in each eye, one bright, one dim, separated by 12 pixels, the same 12-second constant recurring throughout all Holt data. A spectral overlay converts brightness to frequency. The resulting tone, played through an oscilloscope, draws a waveform identical to Holt's recorded voice saying, "It's rearranging the air." Theories circulating within Section Delta 4. Temporal echo hypothesis. The face is Holt's own image displaced by a time inversion. The pilot seeing a future version of himself returning the gaze. Reflective entity theory. The luminous form represents the atmosphere phenomenon, assuming human symmetry to communicate. Photochemical residue model. Radiation at the moment of disappearance imprinted an afterimage of the observer from another moment layered into the film. None of these explain why the Polaroid continues to brighten when exposed to moonlight. The face under experiment. In 1990, researchers project the image through coherent light to create a holographic contour map. As the laser sweeps across the emulsion, Sensors record micro-vibrations not caused by equipment. The photograph resonates, a measurable oscillation of 1.2 hertz, again the heartbeat frequency. At peak intensity, the holographic display distorts, forming a three-dimensional suggestion of a human head suspended in vapor. Observers hear a low thrum filling the lab. No speaker active. It was breathing, one technician reports. Not animation. Pressure. The air moved in and out with the light. After 40 seconds, all instruments shut down simultaneously. When power returns, the hologram has frozen into a single frame. The luminous face turns slightly toward the camera, eyes closed, expression of calm surrender. 2002 digital restoration. Advances in AI pattern reconstruction allow a complete scan of the Polaroid's emulsion. When processed at super resolution, the background reflection beyond the cockpit window reveals faint geometric lines, spirals matching satellite topography of the Holt Plateau decades later. The photograph appears to foretell the plateau's eventual transformation. Color spectrum analysis finds trace wavelengths not producible by standard chemical film. Emissions consistent with Cherenkov radiation and high-altitude plasma. Inside the reflection of the pilot's helmet visor, barely visible, are streaks of script-like markings curving along the rim. Linguists recognize no known alphabet, yet the strokes correspond numerically to time coordinates, 12 seconds apart. Anecdotal accounts. Guards assigned to the archive report faint tapping from within the storage drawer. 12 taps, pause, 12 taps again. One night shift worker claims to have seen a brief flash of light seeping through the case, as if a camera just took my picture from inside. Subsequent inspection finds the photo marginally lighter, as though newly exposed. 2015 re-examination. A public university research grant inadvertently uncovers the declassified print. During presentation, a professor projects it onto a widescreen. Midway through the lecture, the classroom lights dim on their own. The projected face brightens until it washes the room in white. For 12 seconds, every electronic device freezes. When the lights restore, the slide has changed slightly. Holt's reflection now visible beside the luminous stranger, both facing forward. The event is captured on video. The file metadata shows a 12-second gap identical to that in Holt's last transmission. Interpretive notes. Dr. Adissa, 2020. We keep calling a photograph, but technically it's an interface, a thin layer of time that trapped reciprocity between observer and phenomenon. What Holt photographed wasn't outside his cockpit. It was a moment when inside and outside stopped being separate. She theorizes the camera's flash acted as a stabilizing event, freezing a single frame of interaction between human consciousness and atmospheric recursion. The face may be the atmospheric echo attempting to wear Holt's geometry long enough to communicate. It looked human because that was the only language available. Current status. The Polaroid remains sealed in a lead-line container at Fort Belvoir. Even through multiple barriers, sensitive instruments record a faint hum measurable as electromagnetic background at exactly 1 beat per human heartbeat. Every 12 hours, the hum spikes for 12 seconds. Infrared cameras aimed at the case capture brief bursts of light that, when slowed, show the outline of a man seated in the cockpit. 2 faces merge by reflection. The storage log's most recent entry, dated March 14, 2024, reads simply, "Surface brightness increased again. The reflection now blinks in time with observer's pulse. Recommend containment at greater depth." Beneath it, scrawled by hand, someone has written, "Maybe it isn't showing his face at all. Maybe it's showing ours, 12 seconds from now." The Air Force denies its authenticity. Forensic Audio Division, Joint Task Group Nightlight. Date, November 14, 2006. Recover material, flight recorder, serial 2B, Holt Recon flight. Condition, partial corrosion, playback intermittence, high static density. Analyst, Dr. Irene Caldwell, lead acoustic engineer. Security classification, restricted/level Omega. For decades, the black box from Captain Raymond Holt's final flight sat in a sealed cabinet inside the Air Force Archives at Fort Belvoir, cataloged, tagged, and largely forgotten. When the container was reopened in 2006 for digital preservation, technicians noticed something odd. The drive still emitted low residual magnetism, though its battery had been removed 30 years earlier. When connected to a modern reader, the device produced a faint continuous hum, barely audible, existing somewhere between tone and breath. The waveform looked wrong. Instead of the usual chaotic scatter of noise, it pulsed at regular 12-second intervals, like a steady heartbeat under static. Forensic analysis detects a hidden subfrequency buried beneath this noise. After hours of spectral separation, equalization, and filtering, the team isolates it. It is not machine hum. It is a voice, low, rhythmic, encoded in infrasonic resonance below the range of hearing. When slowed and amplified, the whisper becomes unmistakable. You were never alone. Initial response. At first, the lab assumes interference, artifact of power lines, or environmental vibration. But cross-checking the magnetic residue confirms the whisper exists inside the recording medium itself, not introduced during playback. The signal's amplitude corresponds precisely to the pulse interval observed in Holt's last telemetry data. 3 separate systems verify the same pattern. Each returns identical phase offset, 12 seconds ahead of the black box timestamp. The implication: the message was recorded before the final transmission occurred. Transcript fragment, analyst notes. 00:00.00, base static. 12.01 seconds, infrasonic bloom begins. 12.02 seconds, whisper detected. Tonal structure consistent with human speech. 12.03 seconds, phrase, you were never alone, male voice, timbre matches Holt's with reverse polarity. 24 seconds, pulse repeats, identical phrasing, spectral mirror of previous cycle. 36 seconds, pulse amplitude increases. Underlying harmonic begins to form countermelody of shorter whispers. At full spectral mapping, the pattern generates a spiraling waveform, 12 concentric rings radiating outward from a central 0 point. When rendered visually, it resembles both an iris and a radar bloom. Psychological reaction in observers. Those present during playback report immediate physical responses. Light dizziness, chills, a peculiar sense of presence behind them. Dr. Caldwell writes in her log, the voice feels localized. It's not coming through speakers. It's occupying the air between them. When one technician attempts to invert the signal to cancel it, the noise briefly coalesces into recognizable language, but the words shift unpredictably. We heard you hearing us. Power surges. The room's fluorescent bulbs pulse exactly 12 times before stabilizing. Comparative analysis. Spectrogram overlay with known recordings of Holt's voice yields near-perfect alignment. The whisper is him. Same vocal range, same inflection, but the waveform orientation is inverted, suggesting backward time propagation or phase mirroring. When reversed, the phrase becomes, alone never were you. Linguists note the inversion maintains syntax integrity, a rare occurrence in random audio reversal. Layered discoveries. Further analysis reveals multiple subfrequencies, nested like shells around the primary whisper. Each layer carries a slightly altered version of the phrase, varying in tone, gender, and distance. Surface layer, you were never alone. Second layer, minus 12 dB, we never left. Third layer, minus 18 dB, keep breathing. Deep layer, minus 24 dB single prolonged exhale, pulse stable at 1.2 Hz. When the 4 layers are combined and converted to visual data, they form a topographic relief matching satellite images of the Holt Plateau, a ghost map made of sound. The echo experiment. Caldwell authorizes a controlled playback in a vacuum chamber to test whether the signal can resonate without atmospheric medium. The whisper persists. Despite total isolation, sensors register pressure fluctuations inside the chamber walls, faint but measurable, as though the air itself remembers the sound even when removed. One scientist calls it acoustic memory. Another, more shaken, mutters, no, it's a response. Voice spring comparison. Advanced AI pattern matching reveals microscopic fluctuations in the whisper consistent with breathing intervals. The pauses correspond exactly to Holt's heart rate during the last minutes of his flight. Essentially, the black box is not playing back his voice. It is playing back his body. To verify, the team overlays an ECG reconstruction from his medical records against the waveform. The peaks align perfectly, separated again by that impossible 12-second lag. Caldwell summarizes in her report. The recording is not an artifact of speech. It is a living signature of physiological rhythm imprinted into electromagnetic field at the moment of phase inversion. The voice is his heartbeat, speaking. Behavioral anomalies. Over the following days, technicians begin experiencing vivid dreams of flight, of endless white light curving upward. Several claim to hear the whisper faintly when near electrical equipment, even when the playback device is powered down. Routine EMF checks reveal low-level emissions from the unconnected black box casing, resonating at 1.2 hertz. A test microphone inside the sealed container captures faint static pulses spelling, in Morse code, the same sentence. Y-O-U-W-E-R-E-N-E-V-E-R-A-L-O-N-E. After the 12th repetition, silence. Transcript. Internal meeting excerpt. Dr. Caldwell. We're dealing with information embedded beneath sound, temporal layering, not electromagnetic interference. Lieutenant Mills. You're saying the box is still recording? Caldwell. I'm saying it never stopped. Mills. Then who's speaking now? Caldwell. That's the question. Temporal mapping. By transforming the signal into 3D acoustic space, researchers discover that each repetition of the phrase slightly alters its own timestamp, as though the message is adjusting, trying to sync with present time. When the alignment finally stabilizes, the whisper lengthens into a full sentence never previously audible. You were never alone, Raymond. We've been here since before the first flight. A pause, then a second, quieter edition. Still waiting for the sky to finish remembering. 2007, the resonance event. During a final playback session, all instruments register simultaneous overload. Audio meters spike, alarms blare, but the speakers emit only a single note, a deep, resonant tone. The phrase repeats one last time, distinctly audible without enhancement. Everyone in the room hears it differently. Some through the ears, others inside the chest. You are never alone. The lights dim. Papers flutter as if moved by pressure wave. For 12 seconds, the building's electrical grid vibrates in harmonic resonance before returning to normal. When they check the recording, the final whisper has vanished from the data file, but remains audible faintly in the background of every device that was present, from laptops to watches. Aftermath and containment. Following the event, the black box is sealed again. Scientists disagree on whether to store it or destroy it. Caldwell insists on one final note in the log. It isn't a message from beyond. It's a reminder from within. The boundary between pilot and sky dissolved, and something on both sides decided to keep talking. She resigns the next day. Colleagues report she often muttered to herself afterward, timing her sentences in 12-second intervals. 2012 follow-up. Routine EM scan of the sealed archive detects low hum re-emerging. When amplified, the pattern reveals new words interleave with the old. We're closer now. Reflection complete. Background frequencies match the sound of a heartbeat measure within the room. Not from a box. Interpretive summary. 2018. A later review by independent researchers reframes the phenomenon. The subfrequency message is not external communication, but a self-referential echo, time folding inward to reassure its own fragments. In that view, Holt's whisper was not meant for Earth's receivers, but for the moment of his own disappearance, ensuring continuity across the gap. One analyst writes, he spoke so that some version of him, 12 seconds ahead, would know he wasn't alone. The air remembered, the machine listened, and we were eavesdropping on their reunion. Today, the black box rests behind layered containment glass in a climate-controlled chamber. Sensors record a single, recurring pulse every 12 seconds. Visitors standing nearby often report a faint murmur just beneath perception, an almost human breath brushing the edge of sound. If isolated, amplified, and slowed, the whisper is still there, unchanged. You were never alone. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Field log, Rhodes Return Expedition. Date, October 11, 1998. Location, Holt Plateau, Yukon Corridor. Status: restricted access. Personal record later declassified. Dana Rhodes returns to the crash site after 26 years. The military checkpoints are gone, the warning signs half buried under snow. The world has moved on. The anomaly has become a legend whispered about by pilots and conspiracy archivists. But Rhodes, retired now, cannot stop hearing the hum in her dreams. The same low resonance that once threatened to control tower when Holt's voice vanished from a channel. She comes alone. No escort, no authorization, just a compass, a field recorder, and the coordinates she knows by heart. At first glance, the plateau looks empty. Wind drifts across a surface that should be stone, but gleams faintly like glass. The place seems to breathe light instead of reflect it. Her boots crunch on frost, and the sound seems swallowed before it can echo. Even in silence, she feels pressure in her ears, subtle but constant, as if altitude is changing with every breath. The sensation pulses, a slow in-out rhythm that her own lungs unconsciously match. It isn't the wind, it's the atmosphere itself, breathing. She removes one glove, cups the air, and feels it move against her palm though there's no breeze. "Hello, Captain," she whispers, not expecting an answer. The plateau seems to listen. She walks toward the crater center, where decades ago the soil had fused into mirror-like obsidian. The glassy surface remains intact, black and flawless, reflecting her shape with strange fidelity. Only the reflections stand a fraction closer, as if eager to step out. When she kneels to set down her recorder, its red light flickers without touch. Static blooms through the speaker, a faint clicking that arranges itself into cadence. 12 beats, pause, 12 again. The same pulse, the same impossible interval. Rhodes smiles sadly. "You never left, did you?" The clicking stops. The silence deepens until it is wait. She retrieves the old photo from her coat pocket. The Polaroid she once saw in evidence. Holt's cockpit window reflecting that luminous human face. She's kept a copy all these years. In daylight, the face is nearly invisible, a pale blur. But as the clouds move overhead, the glass under her knees catches the same alignment of light, and the blur inside the photo sharpens. Eyes open, faint smile. The reflection beneath her mirrors it exactly. For a dizzy instant, Rhodes can't tell which surface she's seeing. The photograph's glossy skin, or the living obsidian stretching to horizon. Both shimmer with identical golden tone. Both seem to breathe. Her ears pop again. The air pressure drops as if the plateau sighs. Dust rises in a spiral, suspended far longer than gravity allows. The radio on her belt, long dead, hisses once. Then a voice, almost tender, barely audible. "Maintain course, Dana." Her throat tightens. "Raymond?" No reply. Only that faint hum beneath everything, now shifting pitch like a heartbeat heard through distance. She realizes it's not coming to her, but through her, her pulse sinking to rhythm until she feels herself part of the same cycle. Inhale, exhale, echo. She steadies herself against the ground. The obsidian feels warm, almost soft. When she lifts her hand, condensation remains, an imprint that fades in 12 seconds. Night comes quickly in the Yukon. She lights a small lantern. Its flame bends sideways though there's no wind. Shadows ripple across the mirrored floor, forming concentric circles that pulse outward like water disturbed by invisible motion. She sets the recorder to capture sound. Instead of wind, it picks up faint breathing. 2 patterns, hers and another, deeper, surrounding. "If you're here," she says softly, "I'm listening." The reply rises from beneath her knees, from the molten glass itself, a single exhale that distorts the flame. Then words, faint but unmistakable. "You were never alone." Rhodes closes her eyes. It's the same phrase discovered in the black box analysis years earlier, but hearing it out here, where the sky feels closer than thought, makes something inside her release. She laughs once, not from humor but recognition. "You waited all this time." Still waiting. The voice murmurs, fragmented by static. Horizon correcting. The pressure in her ears increases. Her lantern gutters. The mirror beneath her begins to ripple like breathing skin. For an instant she sees depth beneath the surface. Columns of light arranged like vertebrae, moving with the rhythm of respiration. Shapes drift inside the glow, human silhouettes bending as though in slow motion. She whispers, "Raymond, is that you?" The shapes pause. One turns upward. 2 points of brightness. Eyes, perhaps, align with her gaze. Then the light folds inward and collapses into silence. The next moment, the air clears. The ground is solid again, cold, ordinary. Only the faint smell of ozone lingers. Back at her truck, Rhodes listens to the recorder. The tape runs 30 minutes longer than she remembers being on site. The extra section contains no wind, no voice, only breathing perfectly paced, perfectly calm. 2 breath patterns. When she compares them, the second matches the frequency signature of Captain Holt's last transmission. Her report that night is short, handwritten. The plateau is still alive. It breathes memory. The air is learning us the way it once learned him. We should leave it to finish. She files a note in her personal archive and never returns again. But every year on the anniversary of Holt's disappearance, her home weather radio hums to life for 12 seconds, no matter how far she's moved. And within the static, faint but clear, a voice still whispers the same message. Gentle, constant, familiar. You were never alone. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Declassified testimony. Department of Defense oversight hearing. Subject, Project Resonance Training. Witness, Dr. Cale Verona. Date, May 3rd, 2007. Location, Washington, D.C. Dr. Cale Verona sits beneath the hard light of the committee chamber, a man who looks perpetually half-lit. Eyes hidden behind glasses thick enough to blur the line between exhaustion and regret. He had once been the rising prodigy of Area 51's Visual Cognition Laboratory, a research division buried under so many layers of bureaucracy it barely existed on paper. For 20 years, Verona studied how the human brain interacts with electromagnetic environments, especially those that distort perception at high altitude. He called it resonant feedback between consciousness and field. The Air Force called it instrument interference. Now, in this hearing, he speaks in the measured tone of a man who has waited too long to be believed. Captain Raymond Holt, he says, wasn't a random victim of anomaly. He was part of the sanctioned program. We called it resonance training. The room stirs. Until this moment, resonance training existed only in rumor, a whispered footnote in black budget audits from the 1970s. Verona explains that in 1971, the Air Force funded cognitive research after a series of unexplained pilot disorientations during high-frequency radar tests. Their theory, certain individuals unconsciously synchronized with radar pulses, producing both hallucinations and brief surges of neural coherence measurable on EEG scans. In those rare cases, the pilots reported sensations of expanded perception, seeing radio waves, hearing light. The Visual Cognition Lab theorized this was resonant entrainment, the human mind adapting perceived electromagnetic spectrum directly. The first phase, Verona testifies, involved short exposure to subaudible frequencies. Most subjects reported migraines or visual halos. Holt didn't. He described the sound as breathing through him. That's when we realized his brainwave harmonics matched the carrier's signal almost perfectly. Holt volunteered for extended sessions. He said it made him feel less alone in the cockpit. Project overview from Verona's archive notes. Objective: train pilots to maintain cognitive stability within fluctuating electromagnetic fields. Hypothesis: human neural oscillations can couple with radar frequencies to form a stable feedback loop, a resonant state, reducing spatial disorientation and possibly expanding situational awareness. Procedure: expose subject to controlled radar pulses while immersed in sensory deprivation tanks. Monitor EEG for synchronization patterns. Expected side effects: auditory hallucinations, temporary identity dissociation, mild time distortion, recorded in milliseconds. Unexpected outcomes: subject begin reporting voices, not random but responsive. When researchers altered pulse intervals, the voices adjusted rhythm accordingly. Holt called the entity in the static the listener. Verona looks directly at the senators. I warned them the training was doing more than conditioning perception. It was inviting resonance back. When a brain synchronizes with field that broad, the feedback doesn't stop when a machine does. Holt's sessions were increasing in duration because he claimed the silence afterward felt incomplete, as if the air around him were still waiting for instruction. According to Verona, Holt's final training cycle occurred only 2 weeks before the fateful flight. The program log shows that he achieved sustained phase lock, meaning his brain waves and the test frequency merged for a continuous 12 seconds, the same number that would later define the anomaly's rhythm. The session ended abruptly when the tank's sensors overloaded. Holt emerged calm, euphoric, whispering, "I heard them breathe." Confidential addendum. Visual residues. Verona's team observed a peculiar phenomenon during Holt's later sessions. When lights were extinguished, faint afterimages remained in the air, geometric ripples visible for several seconds, as though the environment itself had recorded the scene. Cameras captured none of it, yet everyone present perceived it directly. We called them visual residues. Verona says, they looked like reflections suspended without mirrors. After Holt's disappearance, similar light patterns were detected over the Yukon corridor, circular, rhythmic, resembling optical memory. It wasn't coincidence. Verona tells the committee. He'd been trained to synchronize with environmental resonance. When the anomaly appeared, it recognized its own frequency. It remembered him. One senator asked bluntly, "Are you suggesting Captain Holt caused a phenomenon?" Verona shakes his head. "No, sir. I'm saying he completed it." The hearing room grows quiet. He continues, voice softer now. "We assumed resonance was a one-way connection, that the mind adapted to field. But Holt proved the field can adapt to the mind. We weren't teaching him to resist interference. We were teaching the atmosphere to listen." Declassified Memorandum, Excerpt 1972. Project, Resonance Training, Subject R. Holt. Final EEG session. Sustained coherence at 1.2 Hz. Subject entered altered vocal state, repeating the phrase, "They're above the clouds, but beneath us." Environmental sensors recorded synchronous pressure oscillation, matching the cadence of his speech. Following day, test chamber air density increased by measurable margin without temperature change. Notes: air responded to language. The memo was buried in the Visual Cognition Lab's archives until Verona resurfaced it during the hearing. He pauses, then delivers a statement that seals the session into legend. You call it the Holt anomaly. I call it feedback. He didn't vanish into the sky. He entered the resonance we built for him. Outside the chamber, reporters swarm. Some mock Verona as another conspiracy eccentric. Others note his credentials: MIT, Caltech, multiple patents in neural interface technology. His reputation ensures the story will not die easily. Months later, leaked photos show a resonance tank still stored in a Nevada hangar, its walls lined with mirrored tiles fused from obsidian glass identical to samples recovered at the plateau. The serial number on the tank matches the lab inventory from Holt's last session. In a private interview recorded years afterward, Verona expands on what he left unsaid under oath. "We believed resonance could extend perception. What we didn't consider is that perception might extend resonance. When Holt synchronized with the carrier frequency, his consciousness didn't just align, it propagated. The field kept breathing him long after his heart stopped." He looks off camera, eyes wet. "You think space is empty between clouds? It's full of memory, waiting for someone to listen again." When the recording ends, a final footnote flashes across the report. Status: program terminated. Recommendation: do not expose new personnel to frequency band 1.2 Hz. Below, handwritten in fading ink, an unverified annotation believed to be Verona's own. "The air still hums when you speak his name." The Department of Defense denies its authenticity. Declassified document series, Department of Defense/Psychological Operations Command. File set, phase line/reflector incidents, 1948 to 1973. Access level, release under FOIA request hashtag 19-8801. Status, formerly eyes only. When the Holt anomaly was reopened for review, archivists found it was not the first recorded case of a pilot meeting himself in the air. Buried beneath decades of unrelated flight, records lay a sequence of classified investigations, each sealed under the codename Project Reflector. The files reveal at least 9 disappearances between 1948 and 1973 involving military aviators who reported seeing their own doubles while in flight. Each case predates Holt's, following a disturbingly similar pattern: static interference, mirrored radar signatures, and final transmissions that end mid-sentence, often preceded by the same phrase, "He's flying beside me." Case 1, Lieutenant Mason Avery, U.S. Navy, 1948. Avery's Corsair vanished over the Philippine Sea. His last communication was calm, but incredulous. Visual contact with friendly, "Wait, that's me. He's banking the same. He's..." Transmission ended in static. Recovery teams later found his life jacket and logbook floating miles apart. The log's last entry, written second before takeoff, contained a single line in different handwriting: "Return later." Analysts attributed it to exhaustion. Privately, investigators noted the ink's chemical composition did not match any pen in his kit. Case 2, Captain Henri Duval, French Air Force, 1951. While participating in NATO exercises, Duval radioed tower that another jet had joined formation. Controllers confirmed only a signal. Duval insisted the aircraft carried his markings, his number, even the same scar pattern on the fuselage from a training mishap weeks earlier. Ground radar registered a double echo, one fractionally delayed. Both blips merged, then disappeared. Witness pilots later claimed to see a flash like sunlight folding inward. Case 3, Major Ellen Price, RAF Experimental Flight Division, 1956. Price tested a new radar altimeter designed to resist magnetic interference. Her voice transcript: instruments reading double, horizon inverted. God, she's waving. Controllers assumed she referred to another pilot, but she was alone. Her craft returned on autopilot an hour later. No pilot inside. Cabin temperature normal. Fuel intact. Canopy sealed from within. Under ultraviolet light. Price's name was found etched into glass from the inside out, each letter fused by unknown heat source. Case 4, Commander Yevgeny Rasov, Soviet Air Forces, 1960. Declassified after the fall of the USSR. Radar logs describe a MiG-21 that shadowed itself at precisely 12-second intervals. Rasov's final voice recording translated: "If I match his climb, he climbs. If I cut throttle, he cuts. It's delayed by thought, not by movement." The jet disintegrated midair without explosion. Fragments were later found fused into translucent glass beads. Soviet scientists called it temporal combustion. Case 5, Commander William Sloan, U.S. Air Force, 1963. During high-altitude reconnaissance, Sloan reported seeing himself leaving the plane. Telemetry shows cockpit pressure spikes concurrent with brainwave frequencies transmitted through helmet sensors. A second biometric trace, nearly identical to Sloan's, appeared 12 seconds later, though no second pilot existed. Post-incident recovery discovered 2 distinct sets of fingerprints on his control stick, both his own but mirrored. Case 6, Lieutenant Rosa Valente, Brazilian Air Command, 1965. Valente's encounter occurred over the Amazon basin. Flight data recorder captures atmospheric inversion similar to the later Holt incident. Pressure oscillation at 1.2 hertz, the heartbeat frequency. She reports another plane locked to her wingtip, visible only in reflection of canopy glass. "It smiles when I smile," she says, "and when I stop it keeps smiling." Minutes later, her aircraft vanishes from radar. A circular scar of fused sand, perfectly mirrored, appears on the forest floor beneath the last known coordinates. Case 7, Project Echo 9, Joint U.S. Canadian Test, 1968. 2 pilots flying parallel altitude corridors record identical telemetry. When their paths intersect, both planes merge visually, each pilot claiming to see himself aged. Film recovered from onboard cameras shows a single aircraft flickering between 2 paint schemes, one pristine, one weathered. Frames alternate exactly every 12 seconds. Official explanation: camera malfunction. Unofficial conclusion: Visual feedback between present and reflected craft. Notation later echoed in Holt's debriefing file. Case 8. Captain Raymond Holt, U.S. Air Force, 1972. His disappearance over the Yukon consolidates all previous anomalies. Unlike the earlier cases, Holt's black box survives. Within it lies the whisper. You were never alone. Cross-analysis of signal residue finds trace harmonics matching subfrequencies from each prior disappearance, as though all 9 events were fragments of one repeating transmission. Case 9. Classified/location redacted, 1973. The last recorded mirror encounter. Test pilot unknown. A fragmentary document found in Project Reflector Archives lists only one line under results. Subject achieved phase convergence. Atmospheric return initiated. The project was shut down within the week. Pattern summary. Across all 9 cases. 12-second displacement between pilot perception and instrument data. Reports of visual duplication or mirrored self preceding disappearance. Fused rain glass or electromagnetic residue at recovery sites. Final radio or written communication referencing reflection, breathing, or memory in the air. One internal memorandum concludes. When velocity, altitude, and magnetic harmonics align, the atmosphere behaves like a mirror attempting to remember the last thing that touched it. The aviator meets his own reflection. Past or future, impossible to tell, and the two cannot coexist. One is always absorbed. The rediscovery of these cases during the Holt investigation suggests that the phenomenon had been unfolding for decades, gradually learning. A marginal note on the final page, anonymous, typewritten, slightly misaligned, reads, "Perhaps they didn't disappear. Perhaps they completed the loop." Below it, handwritten in fading ink, "Every reflection wants to live." The Department of Defense denies its authenticity. Declassified Communications Archive, Nightlight Case File NR 72H, Document Type, Partial Transcript/Transmission Logs, Recovered Segment 5C, Date of Origin, March 14, 1972, Date of Recovery, April 9, 2009, Source Medium, Magnetic Tape Fragment from Auxiliary Radio Channel, Status, Formerly Top Secret, Ultra Sensitive. When archivists reopened Holt materials for digital preservation, they discovered a secondary audio channel embedded inside the original flight transmission tape, a track never cataloged in 1972 because equipment to detect it simply didn't exist. The signal had been recorded in an unused bandwidth of the aircraft's communication suite, overlapping the standard voice channel, but oscillating at a frequency human ears could not perceive. After 40 years of magnetic degradation, noise filtering, and phase inversion, the hidden transmission came to life. Within the static, amid breaths and engine hum, analysts heard something chillingly intimate. "Steady now, Ray Ray." The nickname, Ray Ray, was known only to Holt's family. No military record or public transcript ever referenced it. The term appears throughout the tape, whispered in a tone neither mechanical nor overtly human. For decades, this information was classified, redacted even from families of the disappeared. The reasoning was clear. If the phenomenon could access private memories, it implied interaction not with random pilots, but with the core of individual identity itself. Transcript reconstruction. Fragment 5C, March 14, 1972. 1 hour 55 minutes and 23 seconds. Holt. Turbulence increasing, horizon folding again, visual distortion. Static, entity, easy, Ray Ray. You always grip the stick too tight. Pause, pilot breathing heard. Holt, who's transmitting? Identify. Entity, it's all right, you can relax now. Holt, say again. Entity, it's me, you. The line fades into a low harmonic hum, lasting 12 seconds before normal cockpit noise resumes. Forensic analysis. Acoustic specialists confirm the inflection and timbre of the voice align almost perfectly with Holt's own, shifted downward by a fractional delay of 0.8 seconds. Essentially, the voice sounded like Holt speaking to himself before he spoke. Investigators at Wright-Patterson AFB struggled to explain how the communication system could produce a predictive echo that addressed the pilot personally. The official report uses a phrase, temporal feedback loop of unknown origin. Unofficial memos between analysts are more candid. If the signal precedes the speaker, then who is instructing whom? If he was hearing himself, it was a version that already knew what came next. Personal context. Holt's younger sister, interviewed in 1975, confirmed that Ray Ray was the pet name their late father had used during their childhood in Nebraska. It never appeared in military correspondence, and Holt had reportedly been embarrassed by it as an adult. "No one on that base could have known," she said. "When we heard it on the tape, we thought they were playing tricks on us." Her testimony was sealed under national security exemption until 2009. Behavioral pattern on tape. The nickname seems to soothe Holt. Immediately after hearing it, his breathing steadies. His tone changes from panic to quiet awe. "Holt, I know that voice." Entity. "Of course you do." "Holt, were you transmitting from?" Entity. "From before." "Holt, before what?" Entity. "Before you learned to be afraid of falling." Each time the voice finishes a sentence, the aircraft instruments respond. Altimeter resets, temperature drops, and pressure inside the cockpit equalizes. Analysts later describe it as the environment reacting emotionally, stabilizing in synchrony with Holt's calm. Classified addendum. Mnemonic intrusion. Psychological consultants attached to the case coined a new term to categorize the event. Mnemonic intrusion, defined as external manifestation of autobiographical memory through electromagnetic medium. Their theory proposed that the phenomenon accessed Holt's subconscious archive, selecting emotionally resonant memories, his father's voice, his childhood name, to maintain communication when linguistic systems failed. When the pilot entered resonance, reads one memo, his identity became the easiest channel available. The sky spoke the language of his own memory. Another scientist, less poetic, summarized it bluntly. Whatever this was, it learned intimacy first. Secondary discovery, phase inversion analysis. In 2010, digital restoration revealed 2 layers of the same whisper, one inverted. Played simultaneously, they form an audible interference pattern producing new words between the beats. "We never stop watching, Ray Ray." "Keep breathing." "Come home." Engineers running the playback in a shielded room report a curious phenomenon. The oscilloscopes begin pulsing in sync with their heart rates. When they stop the recording, the equipment keeps pulsing for 12 more seconds before settling. The experiment is immediately halted. Theoretical implications. Dr. Cale Verona, brought back as consultant after his earlier resonance training disclosures, suggests the voice represents a phase-lock feedback between Holt's cognitive frequency and environmental resonance field. In simpler terms, the sky was repeating Holt to himself in real time, using emotional memory as stabilizer. It's not imitation. Verona tells investigators. It's empathy. The phenomenon borrowed his affection to keep him aligned. The nickname wasn't random. It was how the field said his name correctly. The final 12 seconds. The closing moments of the recovered log are faint but decipherable. Entity, "We're here, Ray Ray." Holt, "I can see light between seconds." Entity, "Then step through." Static, "Holt, tell them." Entity, overlapping. "They were never alone." The recording ends with sound like drawn breath, the same 1.2 Hz pulse recurring throughout the entire case. Aftermath. The disclosure of the nickname ignited internal controversy. Officials feared that acknowledging personal knowledge within the phenomenon would confirm intelligent agency rather than random environmental anomaly. For nearly 50 years, the existence of the Ray Ray transcript remained buried under layers of misdirection. In 2021, when fragments finally reached public archives, an accompanying note from an anonymous archivist was discovered tucked inside the file. If the sky can learn our names, maybe it remembers all of them. And beneath that, faintly stamped by the restoration team's equipment log, at exact 12-second intervals, appeared the same phrase that haunted every recovered piece of data since 1972. "You were never alone." The Air Force denies its authenticity. Laboratory report. Acoustic containment test / nightlight recorder playback. Facility. Los Alamos Research Annex 9. Date. September 4th, 2008. Lead researcher Dr. Irene Caldwell. Objective: control playback of recovered Holt flight recorder within vacuum-sealed acoustic chamber to analyze residual resonance phenomena. When scientists replayed the flight recorder in the isolated chamber, they expected nothing more than faint static and a corrupted audio log. Instead, the walls began to vibrate. At first, the tremor was almost imperceptible, a low quiver in the metal framework, like a truck passing far in the distance. But the amplitude rose in perfect rhythm with the playback's pulses. Pressure sensors registered micro-oscillations at exactly 1.2 hertz, the same frequency later confirmed as Captain Holt's recorded heartbeat during the final minutes of his flight. The air itself seemed to respond. Every molecule became an instrument, humming in unison with that long-dead rhythm. The scientists watched in disbelief as the chamber's internal misting sensors displayed delicate waves moving through empty space, breathing patterns without lungs. Dr. Caldwell described it in her notes. The air is resonating as though it recognizes him, not echoing, remembering. It moves between compression and release like inhalation and exhalation. The chamber feels alive. Spectral scans revealed that the vibrations were not purely mechanical. The oscillation carried subtle harmonics within the human vocal range, faint traces of syllables forming and dissolving inside the hum. When slowed to real-time playback, the pattern resembled whispers, non-directional, surrounding the microphones. Several technicians swore they heard words emerging through the modulation. Altitude, steady breathe. Caldwell refused to classify them as hallucination. The data supported audibility beyond coincidence. The frequencies matched known phonetic intervals. To eliminate structural resonance as a cause, engineers powered down all electronics and replayed the tape using a mechanical drive isolated from current. The phenomenon persisted. Even without electricity, the chamber walls trembled and the temperature fell 4 degrees Celsius. "We built a silence," Caldwell wrote, and it refused to stay silent. Every 12 seconds, the hum dipped into near infrasound, so low it ceased to be heard, and instead felt a subtle compression that made each person in the room inhale simultaneously, as if their own bodies were being drawn into the rhythm. Heart monitors attached to 3 researchers recorded synchronization within 90 seconds of exposure. Their pulses slowed, adjusted, then matched the 1.2 hertz cycle precisely. The effect ceased only after playback was stopped. When they reviewed high-speed footage, an anomaly appeared. Condensation formed on the inner glass, expanding and retracting in time with the sound. Within the fog, faint outlines emerged, interlocking concentric rings that mimicked the pressure waves of Holt's last transmission. For 12 seconds, the rings glowed faintly, almost golden, before fading back into ordinary vapor. After the test, the chamber retained a residual hum even while empty. Instruments placed inside continued to register oscillation for 12 hours, tapering gradually as if the air were reluctant to stop breathing. In her final report, Caldwell summarized the impossible conclusion. The recording is not passive data. It behaves as an organism, responding, adapting, attempting communication through sympathetic resonance. The air does not merely carry Holt's frequency. It reproduces it as if recalling a pattern imprinted at the molecular level. When asked whether she believed the vibration implied intelligence, Caldwell paused before answering. "If this is intelligence," she said quietly, "it's not foreign. It's memory." The atmosphere learned the rhythm of a human heart and decided it liked the sound. The playback chamber was sealed permanently after the experiment. Visitors today report that, even through the reinforced glass, they can sometimes feel a faint pulse in the air, steady, slow, and human, whenever the room falls completely silent. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Incident report, Air Force Recovery Division. Subject: visual anomaly observed during Holt Plateau water reconnaissance. Filed by Lieutenant Commander Aaron L. Beach, Diver Unit 17. Date: June 8, 1973. Location: Glacier-fed lake, Yukon Corridor, approximate 12 miles east of Holt Plateau perimeter. Status: restricted access, declassified 2009. The event begins as routine search protocol. After months of silence from the official inquiry into Captain Holt's disappearance, a joint Air Force Geological Survey team is dispatched to examine subglacial runoff pools thought to contain debris. The water is clear, impossibly still, a mirror stretched across the crater's shadow. At 6:43, Lieutenant Commander Beach, lead diver, enters the lake tethered to a surface winch. Depth, 15 feet. Visibility, nearly perfect. The sonar registers nothing but faint static echoes, as though sound itself bends away. Then the diver freezes mid-descent. His headset crackles. His breathing accelerates. Beach transmission control. I got visual contact with something above me. Control. Above? Confirm. Object in the air? Beach. Affirmative. Body. Human shape. Upside down, maybe 20 feet up. Not falling. Just hanging there. On the surface. Observers glance upward and see nothing. Only the diver claims to see it through the wavering refraction of the water, describing the apparition as a man suspended in midair, head pointing toward the lake, arms loose at his sides. Beach circles beneath, convinced it's some optical trick, perhaps a reflection, yet his instruments disagree. Compass begins spinning. Depth gauge flickers. When he moves closer, the water around him turns oddly viscous, resisting motion like thick air. It wasn't like swimming anymore, he later tells investigators. It was like the lake had forgotten gravity, and I was sinking through memory instead. He described the body as motionless, skin pale as light through milk glass, features obscured by shimmer. The boots, however, are unmistakable, standard-issue flight gear from the early 1970s. Could have been Holt, Beach whispers on the tape. But the face, it looked wrong, like it hadn't decided who it belonged to yet. When he signals for surface illumination, floodlights flash across the water. The instant the beam touches the figure, it vanishes. Not dissolving or sinking, but folding out of sight as if flipped into another plane. The sonar emits a sharp spike, then goes dead. The radio follows. For 30 seconds, the diver's suit camera records nothing but a blinding whirl of bubbles and light distortion, like heat mirage underwater. When the image stabilizes, the lake is empty again. Beach ascends in silence. His first words on the surface. You can't shine light on it. The light erases it. Post-dive observations. Within minutes of extraction, Beach complains of pressure in his ears, identical to altitude compression. Medical readings show his internal barometer oscillating at 1.2 hertz. The recurring heartbeat frequency tied, the Holt anomaly. Later, reviewing his helmet audio, technicians identify low infrasound beneath his voice. 12 pulses repeating every second, forming a phrase when filtered. Still here. The signal does not correspond to any known transmission source. Follow-up investigation. Subsequent dives yield no visual confirmation. However, magnetometers detect a vertical magnetic column rising from the lake's center into the air for approximately 20 meters, exactly where Beach claimed to see the apparition. The column pulses faintly at 12-second intervals, creating what researchers term an electromagnetic ladder. When plotted in 3 dimensions, the pulses form a silhouette identical to a human figure inverted. Head toward the water, arms downward. Theorists later suggest this could be a phase residue, a kind of atmospheric echo left when 2 realities briefly overlapped. Personal statement. Lieutenant Commander Beach, filed confidentially, 1975. I know what reflections look like. This wasn't one. Reflections copy you. This thing was independent. It hung there waiting, not falling, not rising. When I looked up, I swear it was looking down to the water at me, like I was the one trapped upside down. He reports recurring dreams afterward, standing beneath a mirror lake, staring up at his own inverted form drifting just beyond reach. In every dream, when light touches a reflection, it disappears, leaving only ripples shaped like lungs expanding. Final addendum, 2009. Decades later, restoration of Beach's helmet footage reveals a single frame overlooked by earlier analysts. Between the static bursts, one still image shows a faint human outline suspended in the air above the water, inverted exactly as described. The figure's flight suit bears a name patch blurred but legible enough to read the first 3 letters, HOL. Digital enhancement finds another anomaly, the reflection of the diver's lamp beam bending upward. Not off the water, but into it, as though the light itself preferred the lake's depths. The file closes with an annotation typed by an unknown archivist. If the reflection was above the water, then where was the real body? Below it, handwritten in fading pencil, are the last words from Beach's own debriefing tape. Words he muttered half-conscious after surfacing from that impossible dive. He wasn't drowning. He was breathing where air shouldn't be. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Recovered personal correspondence. Nightlight case file in R72H. Document type. Handwritten letter. Recipient, Mrs. Caroline Holt. Postmark, March 15, 1972, one day after Captain Raymond Holt's disappearance. Recovered, 1981, during Postal Archive Digitization Initiative. Status, formerly top secret, withheld from next of kin until 2009. The envelope was ordinary, white civilian stationery, Air Force return address typed cleanly, yet its postmark date defied reality. Holt's jet had vanished over the Yukon on March 14, 1972. The letter was stamped and routed through a military postal hub the following day. No one ever explained how. Inside, the handwriting was unmistakably Holt's. Steady, precise, the same blue ink loops found in his pilot logbooks. The letter contained only one short paragraph. Caroline, if you ever hear my name again, don't believe it came from the sky. They're not coming from the sky. They're coming from inside the light. No signature. Only a faint smudge of fingerprint near the bottom edge. Later confirmed to be his. Forensic examination. Postal investigators verified the envelope's authenticity. Ink, paper fiber, and postal routing were all consistent with early 70s materials. Yet the ink contained trace isotopic contamination identical to samples taken from the fused obsidian soil at Holt's crash coordinates, material that did not exist at the time the letter was supposedly mailed. The postal facility's records showed no human entry under Holt's name on March 15th. The envelope appeared in the sorting queue without origin scan, as if inserted midstream into the system. When archivists opened the letter decades later, radiation counters registered a faint pulse every 12 seconds, the same frequency recorded in the black box hum. Psychological context. Caroline Holt received the letter only in 1981, nearly 10 years after her husband's disappearance. She described a subtle warmth radiating from the paper when she held it under lamplight, as though the ink itself responded to illumination. "I read the line about the light," she told investigators, "and the bulb above me flickered in rhythm once, then 12 seconds later, again. I thought I was imagining it, but the light breathed." She refused to destroy the letter, even after the Air Force requested its return for archival safety. Analytical addendum, inside the light. Physicist Cale Verona, reconsulted in 2007, noted that Holt's phrase corresponded to theoretical language used during resonance training, specifically to describe field analyzation when electromagnetic reflection ceases to bounce and instead refracts inward. If Holt's consciousness entered resonance, Verona explained, his message makes perfect sense. Not extraterrestrial. Intraphotic. The intelligence isn't arriving from space. It's growing within illumination itself. In this framework, inside the light refers to information encoded within photons. The sky not as a messenger, but as the membrane carrying memory. Additional anomalies. Infrared scans of the paper revealed faint secondary writing, invisible to the naked eye. When digitally enhanced, the hidden text formed repeating concentric lines. 12 exactly, each bearing the same 4 words written in microscopic script. "We are still here." The ink glowed faintly when exposed to certain wavelengths, not from fluorescence but from spontaneous emission, light seemingly generated by the paper itself. Technicians recorded a hum accompanying the glow, identical in pitch to Holt's recorded heartbeat. Archivist note 2009. It is possible the letter was imprinted posthumously through residual resonance, the same mechanism that caused his voice to persist on the black box. The light did not carry the message across distance, but across time. When it shone through him, it wrote back. Today, the letter remains sealed behind double glass in the Air Force Historical Archive, Visitors report that when the display room darkens, faint script becomes visible beneath the main handwriting, drifting like reflection caught mid-breath. It reads, softly luminous, "Caroline, the light remembers you too." The Air Force denies its authenticity. Federal Communications Commission, Incident Bulletin 441A. Subject, unauthorized recurrent broadcast / Holt transmission phenomenon. Date, February 6, 1982. Classification, restricted / later declassified, 2011. It began with scattered reports from amateur shortwave operators across the American Midwest, Ohio, Illinois, Nebraska, Kansas, each claiming to intercept the same 12-second loop of distorted audio. At first, it was dismissed as coincidence or hoax, but the recordings kept arriving: mail cassette tapes, type reports, even Polaroids of receiver dials glowing faintly in darkened basements. Each operator described nearly identical experience. At precisely 2:14 local time, static thickens into a narrowband pulse, then resolves into a man's voice. The words shift with interference, but fragments remain consistent. Altitude 0, horizon inverted, maintain course. After 12 seconds, silence. Then the signal vanishes, until the following night, when it returns on an entirely different frequency. No transmitter could have done that. Chronology of reports. January 12, 1982, first confirmed interception by operator W9DHK in Omaha. January 13th to 18th, more than 30 hobbyists across 5 states record similar bursts. January 19th, FCC monitoring stations attempt triangulation. The source appears mobile, migrating roughly east to west each night. January 22nd, Civil Air Patrol reports radio compass anomalies matching the same 12-second cycle. January 24th, the signal ceases, only to resume 72 hours later from a point north of Cheyenne, Wyoming, directly beneath the Yukon flight corridor of Captain Raymond Holt, lost a decade earlier. Technical analysis. Audio experts run spectral decomposition on multiple samples. The carrier wave measures 1.2 Hz modulation, the same physiological frequency found in Holt's black box heartbeat pattern. The voice, when cleaned to static, matches Holt's known speech signatures from pre-mission briefings: identical cadence, vowel shaping, and breath interval. But each recording contains minor linguistic drift. Phrases Holt never spoke, yet eerily consistent in tone and syntax. "I'm almost through. The air is folding. Ray, stay calm." Investigators conclude these were either fragments of scrambled military training tape or an elaborate prank. Still, one analyst quietly writes in the margin of his report, "If it's interference, why does it know his nickname?" Eyewitness testimony. Operator W9DHK, Omaha. "I tuned into the 7.830 MHz band around 2 in the morning. Static was dense, like breathing through glass. Then a voice came through, slow, patient. He sounded tired. Said something like, 'The horizon's upside down.' I wrote it off as prank until I realized the pattern repeated exactly every 12 seconds. No variation. Machines don't breathe like that." When the operator replayed his tape the following day, his radio began picking up faint harmonics of the same voice through an unplugged antenna. Government response. By February, the phenomenon had become impossible to ignore. The FCC, in cooperation with the Air Force, deployed mobile monitoring vans to trace the emissions. Every attempt ended with the same result. Triangulation collapsed into a single point directly overhead. The transmissions were arriving from the atmosphere itself. Internal memoranda describe it as ionospheric reflection anomaly, but private notes by technicians use more candid language. It's like the sky is repeating him. Each night, same 12 seconds, same tone, but quieter, like it's learning to whisper. The Midwest chorus. On March 1st, amateur radio clubs reported an escalation. The static began harmonizing. Instead of a single voice, operators across multiple frequencies heard overlapping repetitions, hundreds of echoes merging into layered chant, all derived from Holt's final message. The collective pattern, when visualized as a sonograph, formed concentric rings radiating outward from the center of the continental United States, aligned with high atmosphere wind currents. NASA meteorologists noticed corresponding temperature oscillations at the same rhythm, 12-second pulses of heat and cold sweeping through the jet stream. It was as if the sky itself was broadcasting memory, one scientist later admitted. Later developments. By mid-March, the transmissions faded. But in their place, a residual background hum appeared on multiple civilian frequencies. Too low to hear, yet strong enough to interfere with aircraft navigation beacons. When converted to audible sound, the hum carried faint syllables embedded in amplitude. Not from the sky, from inside the light. Exactly the phrase found in Holt's posthumous letter to his wife. Classified addendum. Declassified 2011. A final entry from an FCC technician dated March 14th. 10 years to the day after Holt's disappearance. Records an unprecedented signal spike. Every shortwave receiver across the Midwest, from 2 to 14 megahertz, synchronized spontaneously for 12 seconds. The combined output produced a single, unified broadcast. Holt's voice, crisp and clear, free of static at last. The horizon's fixed now. You can breathe again. Then nothing. The frequencies return to normal. The report closes with an unsigned note scrawled at the bottom of the final page. Signal strength equal to heartbeat of Earth. Possible atmospheric resonance complete. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Experimental log. Simulation reconstruction / nightlight project continuation. Research lead Dana L. Rhodes read. Facility. Elmendorf Proving Annex, Alaska. Date, November 14, 1999. Status. Classified. Declassified 2021. Haunted by Holt's final transmission and decades of unanswered data, Rhodes obtains access to archived telemetry from a 1972 incident. With a small grant and borrowed Air Force hardware, she attempts a daring reconstruction to digitally rebuild Holt's cockpit environment using the original sensor logs. She inputs everything: altitude fluctuations, oxygen metrics, microphone resonance, and that persistent 1.2 Hz heartbeat pattern. The simulator's purpose is diagnostic, not spiritual, to analyze whether the anomaly could be reproduced mechanically. But when she activates the console, the machine powers itself before the generator connects. Lights surge, panels illuminate, and the central display begins rendering atmospheric data unprompted. The system's external power remains at zero. Inside the simulator, speakers emit a slow hum, pressure oscillations exactly matching Holt's final vitals. Then, the control yoke moves on its own, aligning to the coordinates of the original flight path. Rhodes freezes. The simulation's environment data scrolls backward through time, replaying the 1972 telemetry, but with a difference. Background interference forming rhythmic pulses like human breath. She leans closer to the microphone. System identify. The speakers crackle. A man's voice, faint but calm, answers through distortion. You built it right this time, Dana. Her name was never programmed into the system. Moments later, the simulator shuts itself down. The log file ends with one final line of auto text, generated without input. Altitude 0. Horizon corrected. Rhodes leaves the hangar trembling, certain the machine had not replayed Holt's cockpit. It had resumed it. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Personal field entry, Dana L. Rhodes. Date, April 2nd, 2013. Location, Holt Plateau, Yukon Corridor. Condition, terminal lung carcinoma, stage 4. Classification, personal / found among belongings after death. Rhodes returns one final time. The journey is slow. Every breath costs her effort, but she insists no one accompany her. She says she needs to hear what silence sounds like before she joins it. When she reaches the plateau, dusk is falling. The air carries a familiar hum she once measured decades earlier, a vibration too low to be heard, only felt. It presses against her skin like the pulse of buried machinery. The ground ahead glows faintly through a skin of snow. Where the frost melts, the obsidian surface beneath gleams black and wet, mirroring the clouds. But as she steps closer, the reflection begins to move differently from the real sky above, slow, deliberate, almost aware. The mirrored world below shows another horizon, brighter, deeper, endless. It is as though two skies have been stitched together, one living, one remembering. Rhodes kneels, her breath shallow. The obsidian ripples, scattering faint rings of light that move inward instead of out. Within them she glimpses drifting silhouettes, shapes suspended as if swimming through the lower sky. She whispers, "Raymond, are you still down there?" For a heartbeat, the reflection stabilizes. A human outline appears, weightless, facing her from beneath the glass. The lips move, but no sound comes. Only a pulse through the air, soft and rhythmic, like breathing shared between worlds. Her recorder captures 12 seconds of low resonance before falling silent. When her body is later found, she is seated at the crater's edge, eyes open, face calm, reflected perfectly in the shining ground, beneath a sky that glimmered twice. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Recovered audio log. Device found near the Holt Plateau. Owner, Dana L. Rhodes. Date, April 2nd, 2013. Status, final recording, verified authentic voice match. The wind barely moves. Only her labored breathing breaks the silence. Then, faintly, the air itself thickens, vibrating with that familiar undercurrent. The slow, steady pulse that had haunted every experiment since Holt's disappearance. Rhodes speaks first, voice brittle but lucid. "I'm here, Ray. If you can still hear me, I came back." There's no radio, no playback device. Yet the atmosphere shifts, sound forming directly from pressure changes around her, as if the sky exhales words. "It's not over, Dana." The voice is Holt's, unfiltered, living, carrying warmth that no speaker could replicate. The oscillation peaks. Nearby, frost trembles in concentric rings. They learn to listen. The words travel without direction, as if space itself were their medium. Her instruments react violently. Gauges fluttering, lights flaring despite no power source. For 12 seconds, the plateau hums like a living organism, resonance spilling across every surface. Rhodes steadies her breath, whispering through tears. "Is that what you wanted? For them to hear?" The air answers, not in English this time, but in vibration. Each pulse aligns with her heartbeat until her voice has become indistinguishable hums within the same rhythm. The final seconds of the tape record her whisper fading into static, then let them remember. After that, nothing. Only a lingering resonance that lasts exactly 12 seconds before dissolving into the stillness of windless sky. The Air Force denies its authenticity. Global Communications Report. Final anomaly, Holt frequency event. Date, December 31st, 2013. Location, worldwide. Across every open radio band, a soft pulse begins to emerge. So faint it hides beneath static, yet perfectly synchronized across continents. Satellites, cell towers, even deep space arrays detect the same rhythm. A steady 1.2 hertz beat, matching the resonance of the human brain in its dreaming state. Technicians isolate the frequency. It isn't random. Within the pulse lies modulation shaped like language. Slow, symmetrical, unmistakably deliberate. When translated from waveform into sound, the noise becomes a whisper that every receiver seems to share at once. We remember you, too. For 12 seconds, the world listens. Then the hum fades, leaving only ordinary static. But oscilloscopes everywhere continue to flicker faintly, as if the earth itself were finishing the sentence. The Air Force denies its authenticity.